Chapter 1141. Shi Wushang stared coldly at Nie Tian and Lin Yi, his eyes burning with desire. He originally thought that Nie Tian's and Lin Yi's dragon veins were very terrifying. As long as he obtained one, it could let him advance to 9th level Heavenly Emperor, even reaching peak Heaven Realm strength. But now, seeing that the two people's dragon veins could actually fuse and erupt with such terrifying power, even stronger than his 8th level Heavenly Emperor giant spirit true body, this made him unwittingly even more fervent. Shi Wushang even felt that if he obtained their dragon veins and fused them into his body, not only could he reach peak Heavenly Emperor strength, but he might even be able to break through to the legendary deity realm. Divine Realm. This was the realm that all martial artists yearned for. As long as one reached the deity realm, one would be able to live as long as the heavens and the earth, competing for glory with the sun and moon. Who wouldn't yearn for it? Thinking of this, Shi Wushang's eyes became misty. He seemed to have seen himself standing at the peak. The heaven realm's 9 emperors, the 5 great sword Daos, all of them were prostrating at his feet, worshipping him. This kind of feeling was simply incomparably fanatical. Dragon's vein, I must obtain both of your dragon's veins. A crazed voice rang out in Shi Wushang's mind, making him look like he had gone insane. The crowd gradually calmed down at this moment. They looked at Shi Wushang, who seemed to have gone mad, and could not help but be confused. They did not know why Shi Wushang was suddenly in such a state. Nie Tian and Lin Yi frowned slightly. Of course, they knew what Shi Wushang was thinking. Although Shi Wushang was injured, he still had the strength of an 8th level Heavenly Emperor. As the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Even if he was weak, he was not someone that Nie Tian and Lin Yi could contend with. The dragon energy in Nie Tian and Lin Yi's bodies had already been used up. It was impossible for them to merge their dual meridians anymore. At this moment, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. You 2 stinking brats, die obediently. After a long while, Shi Wushang finally calmed down a little. His eyes regained their coldness, and his whole body surged with terrifying killing intent. He raised his arm and used the hand of the silver wolf. A silver vortex appeared on his palm and he slapped it out. Boom! The silver vortex suddenly expanded in the air, and a terrifying power bloomed, condensing into a sharp silver claw. The sharp aura seemed to be able to tear everything apart. Watch out! When Shui Yong saw this scene, he couldn't help but cry out in alarm, and his heart was in his throat. Everyone's eyes trembled, and a strange joy appeared in their eyes. They seemed to have seen the tragic scene of Nie Tian and Lin Yi being torn to pieces. Many thanks, Nie Tian stood motionless in the face of Shi Wushang's fatal attack. Lin Yi, on the other hand, wanted to escape. Actually, given Nie Tian's abilities, as long as he used the meteor wings, he could completely avoid Shi Wushang's attack. However, he stood there like a block of wood, not moving at all. What is he doing? The crowd exclaimed. Lin Yi retreated, but Nie Tian didn't move. Wasn't he courting death? However, in the next moment, a strange scene appeared. Bang! The silver claw seemed to have bombarded something 100 meters away from Nie Tian. It actually stopped abruptly, and after a muffled sound, it directly shattered. What's going on? The crowd's eyes darkened, and they looked surprised, not knowing what happened. Warship. Shi Wushang's gaze involuntarily darkened when his move was blocked, and he immediately shouted a name. His voice had just faded when the void suddenly shook. A spirit warship appeared. It was the Bai family's 3 siblings' White Cloud spirit ship. The White Cloud spirit ship was protected by a rank 8 spirit formation. Even ordinary 9th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists would find it very hard to break it. Shi Wushang only had the strength of an 8th level Heavenly Emperor, so it was naturally impossible for him to break the spirit ship's defense. At this time, the crowd immediately understood why Nie Tian didn't move at all. It turned out that he knew someone wanted to save him. Nie Tian had long known that Bai Yunfei would move the spirit ship over, so he naturally didn't panic. His many thanks earlier was said to the Bai family's 3 siblings. This is. Shi Wushang looked at the spirit ship in front of him, and his face darkened. This was actually something that was a combination of a spirit ship and a warship. In the next instant, Shi Wushang immediately reacted and asked in a deep voice, "You're from the Bai family?" His expression was extremely gloomy. Nie Tian and Lin Yi already didn't have the strength to fight back. They were just about to obtain the 2 dragon veins, but a spirit ship suddenly appeared at this time. How could he not be angry? Junior Bai Yunfei greets Sect Master Shi. Bai Yunfei bowed slightly and said in a clear voice, appearing extremely respectful. Although Shi Wushang wasn't much, he was a famous figure in the Donchuan Divine Territory, and he was also a senior. Bai Yunfei was very polite to him. "Young Master Yunfei." Hearing Bai Yunfei's words, the crowd couldn't help but exclaim. Their hearts trembled. They truly didn't expect that one of the 4 young masters, young Master Yunfei, would also come to the Xianhuang mountain range. Of the 4 young masters, young Master Godslayer and young Master Yunfei were both here. This was an extremely rare scene. However, young Master Godslayer was already completely ignored at this time. No one paid attention to him anymore. "Nephew Bai." Shi Wushang's eyes suddenly darkened, and he called out in a strange voice, "This is a matter between this sect master and the 2 of them. It's not very appropriate for you to interfere." Shi Wushang obviously knew who Bai Yunfei was. Bai Yunfei was the grandson of the Craftsman Guild's president, Bai Mingbo. His status was extremely high, and even as the sect master of the Heaven Murder Sect, he didn't dare to make a move against Bai Yunfei. "Sect Master Shi." Bai Yunfei smiled and actually opened the spirit ship. He stepped out and said, "Young Master Nie Tian is this junior's friend. There is no grudge between you and him. Can you give this junior some face and stop here?" "Stop?" Shi Wushang smiled coldly, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. "He almost killed this sect master just now, and you want me to stop? Do you think that's possible?" At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly sensed that something was wrong and cried out, "Danger?" But it was still too late. Shi Wushang suddenly made a move and grabbed Bai Yunfei, restraining him. The powerful pressure made Bai Yunfei's face turn red, and he couldn't speak. "Big brother!" Bai Xiaofei and Bai Xiaoye screamed when they saw this. The 2 had never imagined that Shi Wushang would actually dare to attack Bai Yunfei, and even use a sneak attack. The Heaven Murder Sect's sect master actually sneak attacked a junior. Shi Wushang had lost all his face. At this moment, Shi Wushang was already desperate. For the sake of obtaining the ley line, so what if he offended Bai Mingbo? As long as he didn't kill Bai Yunfei, Bai Mingbo wouldn't dare to do anything to him. But as long as he obtained the ley line and his strength increased, would he still be afraid of Bai Mingbo? After fusing with the twin dragon veins, Shi Wushang was confident that he could move unhindered in the heaven realm and be unrivaled. Nie Tian had already seen Shi Wushang make a move in the projection, but he was still a step too late, and Shi Wushang restrained Bai Yunfei. "This is bad." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he felt that things were bad. "Ah, it's so lively here. This daddy will also join in the fun." At this moment, a tyrannical laughter rang out in the void, and a vast aura rushed over. Hearing this voice, Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and his face lit up with joy. A name appeared in his mind: Long Aotian. Chapter 1142. Nie Tian was very familiar with the domineering voice that suddenly rang out in the void. It was Long Aotian. What a domineering aura! As the voice rang out, everyone felt an oppressive aura rushing towards them. It caused their hearts to tremble and their bodies to tremble slightly. In an instant, everyone reacted. The person who had come was an even more terrifying expert than Shi Wushang. "Ha ha ha, Looks like I've come at the right time. I've made it to the most exciting moment of the show. The voice rang out again. A figure flashed by like a ghost, and a black claw appeared in the sky to grab Godslayer. Before anyone could react, a silhouette appeared in the sky and stretched out an arm. It was a sinister skeletal arm that firmly grasped the Godslayer young master. Godslayer didn't react at all. His body floated in the air, but the shadow of a skeletal arm was pressing down on him. He couldn't move, couldn't even speak, and could only look at Shi Wushang in terror. Tears were about to fall from his eyes. As long as the skeletal arm exerted a bit of force, Godslayer would definitely die on the spot. Godslayer! Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Shi Wushang didn't even have time to react. By the time he did, it was already too late. Who is this person? That skeletal arm of his is so powerful. Could it be the legendary Octotera ghost bone? Everyone was stunned. Their eyes focused on the newcomer, and their eyes flickered with light as they tried to guess who it was. The figure flickered and appeared next to Nie Tian. He smiled. "Big brother, I'm not late, am I? If only I'd come a bit earlier." Nie Tian smiled. If Long Outian had come a bit earlier, Bai Yunfei wouldn't have fallen into Shi Wushang's hands. But it wasn't too late now. Long Outian also had a hostage, and it was someone very important to Shi Wushang. His son, Godslayer? Big brother? When the crowd heard how Long Outian addressed Nie Tian and saw how respectful he was to the latter, their eyes trembled violently, and their faces were filled with disbelief. They were all trying to guess who Nie Tian was and why Long Outian would call him Big Brother. You are Long Outian." Right at this moment, Shi Wushang, who had been staring fixedly at Long Outian, finally recognized him. He couldn't help but cry out in alarm. His eyes suddenly trembled, and he couldn't help but reveal a terrified expression. He never thought that the Heaven Realm's #1 madman, Long Outian, who had disappeared for over 100 years, would actually appear here. Long Outian. Hearing this name, everyone was stunned. They looked at Long Outian in shock, and their eyes were filled with terror. The name Long Outian had disappeared for over 100 years, but because of his great fame, many people hadn't forgotten about him. He had gradually become a legendary figure. Now that this legendary figure had suddenly appeared, how could everyone not be shocked? Shi Wushang, long time no see. Long Outian smiled and glanced at Shi Wushang with a cold gaze. His eyes were filled with disdain. "You, the headmaster of the Heaven Murder Sect, are becoming more and more of a scum. You actually ambushed a child. How shameless! Even I feel ashamed for you." "Long Outian, you." Shi Wushang's face darkened. His expression seemed to be saying, "Didn't you ambush Godslayer as well?" Indeed, Long Outian had also ambushed Godslayer, but this was just giving him a taste of his own medicine. "Long Outian, release my son at once, or I'll kill Bai Yunfei." Shi Wushang knew that Long Outian was crazy, so he was afraid that something would happen to his son. "Kill your mother." Who knew that Long Outian would laugh wildly as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He looked at Shi Wushang as if he was looking at an idiot and sneered. "Shi Wushang, did Emperor Chenin kick your head? You're threatening me with the grandson of a white iron rooster. Do you think I care? Kill him if you want, kill him as you please." Long Outian suddenly pointed at Bai Xiaofei and Bai Xiaoye. "There are 2 more over there. If you're not satisfied, then kill them as well. I don't care at all." "You!" Shi Wushang's face immediately turned as yellow as feces. There was no need to mention how ugly he was. He had lost his head in desperation. He was using Bai Yunfei's life to threaten Long Outian. Nie Tian shook his head slightly. He obviously knew that the white rooster Long Outian was talking about was Bai Mingbo. It seemed that Long Outian had once asked Bai Mingbo for a grade 9 Emperor armament, but the latter didn't give it to him. Thus, Long Outian gave the latter the nickname of a stingy rooster. "Shi Wushang, you have to think this through. I heard that the white rooster is stingy and is famous for being protective of his children. If you kill his precious grandson, you have to be prepared for the worst. Who knows, he might flatten your heaven murder sect with a single order. Long Outyen chuckled. He obviously knew that Nye Tian wanted to save Bai Yunfei. He was just playing with Shi Wushang. Gulp. Shi Wushang gulped when he heard Long Outyen's words. Bai Mingbo was indeed a bit stingy. If he really killed Bai Yunfei, it would definitely be a huge hole in the sect. Although the Heaven Murder sect was a first-rate power in the Eastern Divine region, it was still far from being comparable to the Craftsman's Guild. Long Outyen, what do you want? Shi Wushang wasn't too stupid. He could tell that Long Outyen had no intention of killing young Master Godslayer, so he calmed down and asked, "How about this?" Long Outyen chuckled. "I'm acquainted with the White Rooster, so I'll be kind and save that by brat. You release him first, and I'll release him later." Release him together. Shi Wushang's eyes flickered and he frowned. Long Outyen naturally knew what Shi Wushang was thinking. He laughed coldly. "Shi Wushang, do you think I'm as shameless as you? I'm Long Outyen, someone who can destroy a mountain with a spit. Would I act shamelessly with you?" Shi Wushang was startled. He understood Long Outyen. Although the latter was extremely arrogant, he was also very trustworthy. He probably wouldn't act shamelessly. "Fine, I'll release him," Shi Wushang growled. He then looked at Bai Yunfei and said, "Nephew Bai, I was only joking with you. I hope you don't mind." With that, Shi Wushang's aura dissipated. Bai Yunfei's figure flashed, and he arrived at Long Outyen's side. Although he looked a bit frightened, he still maintained his composure. Bai Yunfei didn't think that a dignified headmaster like Shi Wushang, a famous powerhouse in the Eastern Divine region, would actually sneak attack him. It was truly despicable. "Bai brat, are you alright?" Long Outyen glanced at Bai Yunfei. After confirming that the latter was fine, he looked coldly at Shi Wushang and said with disdain, "Shi Wushang, your little joke is really good. I'll tell the White Iron Rooster about this in the future, and have the white-haired old man play a little joke with you too." Long Outyen, you. Shi Wushang's face darkened. He was so angry that he couldn't say anything. Chapter 1143. Shi Wushang forced himself to calm down and not think too much. Looking at Long Outyen, he roared solemnly, "Long Outyen, release him." He already perceived that Long Outyen's strength was merely 8th level Heavenly Emperor. If he did not have a hostage in his hands, he was not afraid of the other party either. One had to know, he, Shi Wushang, was someone who possessed the Silver Wolf Hand. His strength was much stronger than ordinary 8th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. "Release then release, what are you shouting for?" Long Outyen chuckled and directly threw God's Slayer young master out, laughing wildly as he said, "Your son of AB*, I'll return it to you." Shi Wushang's figure moved, catching God's Slayer young master. Seeing the latter's ashen face, he was clearly greatly alarmed and said nervously, "God Slayer, are you all right?" God Slayer young master stood where he was, still in a state of shock. He only reacted after a long time and shook his head blankly, indicating that he was fine. Actually, Long Outyen did not do anything to God Slayer young master at all. It was just that the latter was too cowardly and was frightened. This was the difference between Long Outyen and God Slayer young master. The former was arrogant facing anyone, while the latter only dared to be insolent in front of people weaker than him. At this time, the crowd's gazes shifted between Long Outyen and Shi Wushang, seemingly anticipating a great battle between the two. One was the Heaven Murder Sect's sect master, the other was the Heaven Realm's #1 madman. Both had 8th level Heavenly Emperor strength and even possessed 4 great profound arms. If these two people fought, it would definitely be very exciting. At this time, Lin Yi looked at Nye Tian from far away. He did not expect that the latter actually knew a powerhouse like Long Outyen. Furthermore, Long Aotian looked very respectful toward Nie Tian. This made Lin Yi very surprised. Big brother, should we kill Shi Wushang? Long Aotian's cold eyes swept across Shi Wushang and actually asked directly. It was as if in his eyes, Shi Wushang was not worth mentioning at all and could be casually insta-killed. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He could tell that Shi Wushang's strength was below Long Aotian's. Now that he was injured, it was even more impossible for him to be a match for Long Aotian. Shaking his head, he chuckled and said, "Proud heaven, you brought a tail back, didn't you know?" As he spoke, Nie Tian gazed into the void. Although there was no one there, he had long sensed that a hidden aura was hiding there. Since this person followed Long Aotian here, there was an 80 to 90% chance that he was someone from Azura's gate. Haha, of course I know. Long Aotian didn't find it strange. Instead, he laughed arrogantly and stared at the void. He shouted, "Old fart, you've been following me for a long time. It's time to come out." Long Aotian's eyes were filled with coldness as he transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. "Big brother, this old fart has been following me ever since I left Liangwu City. He didn't make a move and neither did I. After I sent the two sisters-in-law to Mao Xianglong's place, I directly rushed over. Who knew that this old fart still followed me? In order to hurry on my way, I ignored him. I didn't expect that he actually followed to the Xianhuang mountain range." Talking up to here, Long Aotian suddenly realized something and cried out strangely, saying, "F***ck me? He followed me in order to find you, big brother?" All the way until this time, Long Aotian abruptly reacted. The reason why the person following him did not make a move all along was in order to make use of him to find Nie Tian. Nie Tian laughed speechlessly. Long Aotian was not considered too foolish and finally reacted. Actually, this could not be blamed on him either. He must have wanted to rendezvous with Nie Tian as soon as possible, so he did not think so much. But it was fine too. Nie Tian already perceived that the strength of the person in the dark was 8th level Heavenly Emperor. He should not be Long Aotian's match. Long Aotian possessed the 8 desolate ghost bone and continuously absorbed the power of the Een Corpse curse mark. He might advance to 9th level Heavenly Emperor at any time. The crowd looked at Nie Tian and Long Aotian with stunned faces, not knowing who the two people were talking to. "Long Aotian, turns out that you've always known that I've been following you." Right at this time, a voice sounded out in the void. It was very low and hoarse, exuding a gloomy and cold sense of oppression. Following that, the void swayed slightly. A gray-clothed figure appeared. It was a wizened old man, his expression cold, exuding a full chill. His pair of eyes were like that of a venomous wolf, merciless and murderous. What a cold aura! The moment this figure appeared, everyone felt a bone-chilling, killing intent. It was as if the person in front of them was a piece of 10,000-year-old profound ice. The surrounding space was instantly frozen, causing everyone to feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. What a merciless, killing intent! What the others felt was iciness, but what Nie Tian felt was ruthlessness. That person's eyes were very terrifying, cold and murderous, not containing any human emotion. Assassin. In an instant, Nie Tian confirmed this person's identity. Only the most extreme assassin could have such cold eyes. "You are." And right at this time, City Lord Liangwu Ju Tianhua saw that person's face clearly. His gaze involuntarily trembled, and he cried out in shock. But the following words were forcefully swallowed back down. Nie Tian noticed Ju Tianhua's reaction and his gaze involuntarily turned intent. Could it be that the latter knew the old man in front of him? "Heartless, after so many years, turns out that you joined the Azura sect." Long Aotian stared at that person for a long time and suddenly recognized the other party's identity. His eyes immediately flickered with ice-cold, killing intent. Heartless was the name of the newcomer, and this name had already disappeared for a long time. Most people had already forgotten. Heartless, He wouldn't be that person from the Jew family, right? The crowd was stunned, then immediately thought of something. Over 100 years ago, a person with extremely strong martial Dao talent once appeared in the Jew family. It was Heartless. With his own strength, Heartless made the Jew family into a first-rate force in the East River Celestial Territory within a few decades. But then he suddenly disappeared, and there was no news of him after that. From then on, the Jew family also declined, and today, it became a second-rate force. Who would have thought that Heartless, who had disappeared for 100 years, would actually appear again? This time, the situation became interesting. First, there was Shi Wushang, then there was Long Aotian, and now there was Heartless. Although these three people could not be considered peak experts in the East River Celestial Territory, they were definitely top experts. The three people met, not knowing what would happen next. Old Ancestor. At this time, Zhu Tianhua could no longer control himself, and with a wail, he knelt in front of Heartless. Get up. Heartless lightly waved his hand, his eyes still as cold as before. Even when he saw the Jew family's descendant, he still did not reveal the slightest bit of emotion. At this time, Shi Wushang's face stiffened. Obviously, he was quite frightened. He was very afraid that if Long Aotian and Heartless joined forces to kill him, he would definitely not be able to withstand a single move. But how could he know that Long Aotian was someone by Nie Tian's side, and Heartless was the Jew family's old ancestor, as well as an Azura sect assassin? How could these two people join forces? Long Aotian, you know why I'm here, and you also know who the person behind me is, so you'd better not interfere. However, Heartless did not care about Shi Wushang at all. Instead, he looked at Long Aotian and spoke in a cold tone. Then, his stern gaze locked onto Nie Tian, and he said, I'm here to take your life. Chapter 1144. You want to kill me? Nie Tian frowned when he felt the murderous intent. There was no fear in his eyes, only a hint of playfulness. Even though Heartless didn't say it out loud, he was certain that Emperor Chernin was the one who ordered the Shura Gate to attack him. Luo Chenhun, I didn't expect you to be in cahoots with the Shura Gate. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he thought helplessly. In order to kill him, Luo Chenhun invited the Shura Gate to do it. He was truly unscrupulous. However, Nie Tian was puzzled. Why didn't Luo Chenhun do it himself? Could it be that he was afraid of something? He couldn't figure it out at the moment, so he didn't think too much about it. Nie Tian, as long as he doesn't interfere, you're dead. Heartless stared at Huang Xiaolong with murderous intent. Why the F***ck wouldn't I interfere? However, before Heartless could finish his sentence, Long Aotian's arrogant voice rang in the air. With a face full of disdain, he roared, Did your Shura Gate people's brains get squeezed by the Shura Gate overlord? Huang Tianfei is an idiot, and you're also an idiot. You killed my brother in front of me, and you don't want me to interfere? Do you think I'm as stupid as you? His arrogant voice rang in the air, and everyone was stunned. Heartless and cold, and Long Aotian's arrogance. The two styles were too different, and they were not on the same level. Long Aotian, Emperor Chernin spared your life. Do you not know how to cherish it? Heartless stood there, the coldness in his eyes intensified, and his voice was so low that it was suffocating. Long Aotian sneered. Heartless was one of the people who chased after him, so he knew that Illusion Emperor Bailey Fengchen had pleaded on his behalf to Emperor Chernin. My life is stinky and hard, there's no need to cherish it. Long Aotian laughed coldly in a loud voice and said, But you, old bastard, always giving Luo Chenhun your life. Who knows when he will kill you? Killing meritorious officials is old bastard Luo's favorite. Long Aotian, you're courting death. Heartless body trembled. He really couldn't stand Long Aotian's insolence. His ice-cold face finally revealed a look of anger. Nie Tian couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. No matter how calm a person was, they would fly into a rage when they met Long Aotian. I like to court death. If you have the guts, then come at me. Long Outian chuckled. He did not put Heartless in his eyes at all. Forget about a mere Heartless. Even if Emperor Dainite and the Azura Gate Patriarch were here, they wouldn't be able to stop Long Outian's insolence. Long Outian, you've forced my hand. Heartless anger burned in his heart, and he could no longer control himself. Killing intent erupted from his body, and a terrifying aura spread out. A cold aura of death filled the surrounding 10,000 meters. Even those in the distance could feel the suffocating killing intent. This was the terror of an assassin. Calm as water, explosive like fire. Nietion's eyes narrowed, and he prepared to leave at any time. His strength was too weak, and staying by Long Outian's side would only be a burden. Ancestor! At this time, a voice suddenly sounded, and a figure appeared in front of Heartless. Lin Yi. Seeing that it was Lin Yi, Nietion was startled. He didn't expect Lin Yi to appear at this time. Who are you? Heartless' cold eyes swept over Lin Yi, and he revealed a wisp of surprise as he spoke in a deep voice. Ancestor, his name is Lin Yi, the Zhu family's son-in-law. Zhu Tianhua's figure also appeared, bowing. Heartless' eyes darkened, and he glanced at Lin Yi again, saying, "You're very good, indeed qualified to be the Zhu family's son-in-law." After saying that, Heartless looked at Long Outian again. He thought that Lin Yi just came to say hello, and everything would be fine after that. However, Lin Yi took a glance at Nietion and said, "Patriarch, please calm down. There's something I want to talk to you about. He can't die yet." Heartless' eyes suddenly turned cold when he heard Lin Yi's words. He said coldly, "Boy, you're a member of the Zhu family. But if you want to plead on his behalf, you'd better forget about it. He must die." Nietion was also stunned, not knowing what Lin Yi wanted to do. Of course, he knew that Lin Yi wouldn't plead for him. He must be plotting something. Ancestor, the mysterious mountain range really has a heaven and earth spirit pool. If you want to find it, you need Nietion's help, Lin Yi said directly. Heaven and earth spirit pool? Heartless was stunned for a moment, and then he sneered. That's just a legend. It's impossible for the heaven realm to have a heaven and earth spirit pool. Ancestor, this time it's not a legend. Lin Yi's eyes flashed, staring at Heartless, and directly transmitted his voice to the latter. After a moment, Heartless calmed down, and his aura dissipated. His pair of cold eyes looked at Nietion, and there seemed to be some doubt. If we want to enter the Gate of the Void, we need his help? Yes. Lin Yi nodded, and said, "The space-time pressure of the Gate of the Void is very strong, comparable to a spatial storm. If we want to get close to the Gate of the Void, we must find a way to weaken the space-time pressure. As long as I join forces with him, we can greatly weaken the space-time pressure of the Gate of the Void, and then we can enter the Gate of the Void." Nietion listened to Lin Yi's words, and his eyes gradually became complicated. His brain was working fast, and then his face changed. His eyes revealed a huge blazing light, and he suddenly understood Lin Yi's meaning. Use Dragon Chi. Almost at the same time, the Sword Elder's voice also sounded, and he was very happy. He said excitedly, "How could I forget? Dragon Chi can weaken the space-time stability." Nietion and the Sword Elder understood at the same time. Lin Yi wanted to use Dragon Chi to weaken the space-time pressure of the Gate of the Void. Dragon Chi could weaken the space-time stability, and naturally, it could weaken the space-time pressure. Lin Yi should have thought of this 3 days ago, so he did not fight with Nietion at that time. Lin Yi's Dragon Chi alone was far from enough, but if he added Nietion's Dragon Chi, the Dragon Chi after the dual meridian fusion would be enough to weaken the space-time pressure of the Gate of the Void. When Nietion and Lin Yi fought, their dual meridians fought, and the two of them directly created a space-time crack. Just now, when the two of them fused their dual meridians, the strength of the Dragon Chi was beyond imagination. Otherwise, they would not have been able to fight against Shi Wushang. Although the others did not understand Lin Yi's words, they at least heard clearly that there was indeed a heaven and earth spirit pool in the mysterious Yellow Mountain range. Heaven and earth spirit pool. Heartless' gaze flickered, clearly thinking about something. After a moment, he finally opened his mouth and said, "Okay, let's go to the gate of the void there first. Nye Tion's life will be left here for the time being." Although Heartless wanted to kill Nye Tion very much, the allure of the heaven and earth spirit pool was too great. If he could really find the heaven and earth spirit pool, borrowing the power of the spirit pool, he could definitely reach peak 9th level Heavenly Emperor. With this kind of strength, he could be on par with the Heaven Realm 9 Emperors and no longer need to be controlled by the Azura Sect Master. Big Brother. Long Outyen was not interested in the heaven and earth spirit pool or whatever. Instead, he turned his head to glance at Nye Tion. If the latter made him take action, he would directly kill Heartless, clean and tidy. "Let's go with them." Nye Tion gave Lin Yi a glance, the corners of his mouth curling into a hint of a strange smile, preparing to cooperate with the latter temporarily. He also wanted to enter the gate of the void. Not only was there the heaven and earth spirit pool there, but it was also an alternate space. Chapter 1145. Thousands of cultivators gathered in a spacious area in the profound Yellow Mountain range. As they looked at the chaotic whirlpool in the air, intense fear appeared in their eyes. At the same time, there was also a burning desire in their eyes. "Lin Yi, is this the gate to the void that you were talking about?" Looking at the gate to the void, Wuqing could feel a strong pressure coming from all directions. He couldn't help but frown and ask in a deep voice. "Yes." Lin Yi nodded slightly and a strange smile appeared on his face. "Old Ancestor, the gate to the void is a space-time gate. As long as you step into it, you can lead to another world. The space-time of that world is very stable, so there must be a heaven-earth spiritual pool there." Lin Yi's eyes were full of desire as if he couldn't wait any longer. Wuqing's eyes flickered. He could feel the huge space-time pressure. He also knew that since the Xianwang mountain range could become an oasis in a place like infinite wasteland everlasting, there must be a Yuan Qi vein inside. Thinking about what Lin Yi said, the gate to the void was very likely to have a heaven-earth spiritual pool. On the other side, Long Outyen stared at Wuqing coldly and suddenly asked Nye Tion, "Big Brother, is what that kid called Lin Yi said true?" Nye Tion nodded and smiled. "It should be true. That old fart Wuqing seems to be very interested in the heaven-earth spiritual pool. Is the heaven-earth spiritual pool very powerful?" Long Outyen asked doubtfully. "Of course it's very powerful." Nye Tion smiled. "As for how powerful it is, wait until we enter the gate to the void and see it with your own eyes." At this time, Lin Yi came to Nye Tion's side and smiled. "Nye Tion, I think you also want to enter the gate to the void, right?" "Of course." Nye Tion responded indifferently. "Just now we consumed too much dragon qi and need to rest and recover. The space-time pressure of the gate to the void is very strong. I'm afraid it will take a long time to weaken it to a suitable level. The dragon qi could weaken the space-time pressure of the gate to the void, but it would take time." Nye Tion estimated that it would take at least a few days for the space-time pressure to weaken to the point where a heavenly emperor could withstand it. As for Nye Tion and Lin Yi, their battle with Shi Wushang had exhausted almost all of their dragon qi. They urgently needed to recover. Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "We will start in 3 days." Nye Tion nodded with a smile. He possessed the primal chaos origin coffin, so he would be able to recover completely within half a day. However, Lin Yi would need at least 3 days to recover. However, he was not in a hurry. He could afford to wait for 3 days. Next, Nye Tion began to recover his strength. The others didn't leave. Everyone already knew that the heaven and earth spirit pool was behind the gate to the void. How could they bear to leave? Shi Wushang and the others didn't leave either. They wanted to wait for the gate of the void to weaken before entering. 3 days later, Nye Tion stood up from his cultivation. He had completely recovered, and the various powers in his body were in peak condition. He took a look. Lin Yi was still in the midst of recovery, but he was not in a hurry. He was currently peak second-level Heavenly Emperor and faintly had signs of breaking through to third-level Heavenly Emperor. But he lacked the opportunity. Purely cultivating bitterly, he needed at least several months' time before he could break through. These 3 days, apart from recovering his state, he spent the rest of the time comprehending the soul-devouring sword formation. Previously, the reason why he could raise to the initial stage Sword Profound Realm in a short time was because of the comprehension of the soul-devouring sword formation, letting him condense the soul-devouring sword intent, seizing the opportunity to break through to the initial stage Sword Profound Realm. The initial stage Sword Profound Realm was only peeking into the profundities of the profound meaning. It was still unable to utilize the power of the profound meaning of the sword. The increase in strength was not great. When Ye Tian reached the high-grade Sword Profound Realm, that was the true pinnacle realm of Sword Dao. Only then could the power of the sword intent be truly unleashed. Big brother, another powerful being has appeared. Right at this moment, Long Outyen's voice rang out with a hint of playfulness in it. Nye Tian was slightly taken aback. Following that, he looked into the distance. Several figures appeared above the void. Among them, a middle-aged man's aura was very powerful, descending from the sky, vast and mighty like the deep sea. 8th level Heavenly Emperor's strength. Nye Tian looked at that middle-aged man, divine sense probing over, and was considerably surprised in his heart. The arrival's strength was actually at the 8th level Heavenly Emperor. Looks like this person is also a famous powerhouse in the East River Divine Realm, Nye Tian thought to himself, a worried look appearing on his face. If the news of the heaven and earth spiritual pool spread, more powerhouses would come to the Xianwang mountain range. That would be very bad. At this time, Nye Tian noticed again that a handsome youth stood behind that middle-aged man. The aura on his body was also very powerful. He was actually a 5th level Heavenly Emperor. This youth looks to only be in his 20s and actually has 5th level Heavenly Emperor strength. His martial Dao talent is a little terrifying. Nye Tian looked at that handsome youth, the corners of his mouth twitching a little as he thought to himself. Outyen, who is this person? Nye Tian transmitted his voice to Long Outyen and asked. Big brother, that old one is the Broken Sea Sect's sect leader, Duan Huanghai. This young one should be his son, seems to be the leader of some 4 young masters, Long Outyen answered Nye Tian. At the same time, he looked at the few figures in the air with a nonchalant look. He had stayed in the East River Divine Realm for so long. Even if he did not go out much, he also knew some things. The Broken Sea Sect's reputation in the East River Divine Realm was very great. Like the Heaven Murder Sect, they were both first-rate factions. More importantly, the 2 major sects were even brother sections, because the Heaven Murder Sect's sect leader, Shi Wushang, and the Broken Sea Sect's sect leader, Duan Huanghai, were fellow apprentices. Junior apprentice brother, you're here. At this time, when Shi Wushang saw Duan Huanghai appear, his tightly furrowed brows immediately smoothed out, and he greeted loudly, as if afraid that others could not hear him. Sect leader Shi. Duan Huanghai descended and directly landed beside Shi Wushang and the others. He did not show the proper respect, nor did he call him senior apprentice brother. Instead, he called him sect leader Shi. He and Shi Wushang were indeed fellow apprentices. However, both of them were sect leaders now. How could he still call him senior apprentice brother? Wouldn't he be suppressed for no reason? Oh! Nye Tian was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood. Duan Huanghai's appearance here must have been informed by Shi Wushang. Just now, Long Outyen had already told him about their relationship. It seemed that Shi Wushang felt that he was not strong enough, so he invited a helper. However, looking at Duan Huanghai's reaction, it seemed that he did not think much of Shi Wushang. Shi Wushang had a face full of excitement, while Duan Huanghai had a cold expression. This made the former a little embarrassed. He coughed and said, "Sect Leader Duan, thank you for coming here." "I'm here for the spiritual pool of heaven and earth," Duan Huanghai said coldly as he glanced at Shi Wushang. At this time, everyone understood what was going on, and their gazes towards Shi Wushang were a little strange. Shi Wushang had called Duan Huanghai over because he wanted to use the latter's power to intimidate others. However, the latter's reaction was so cold. He did not take him, his senior apprentice brother, seriously at all. Chapter 1146. Duan Huanghai just arrived and directly said that he came for the heaven and earth spirit pool, as if the moment he arrived, the heaven and earth spirit pool would belong to him. This person being so arrogant, Nie Tian was naturally displeased. Amen. When Duan Huanghai heard Nie Tian's words, his gaze involuntarily turned dark, his eyes trembling slightly, a sharp cold light flickering, and actually released a hint of killing intent. He did not expect that a young martial artist with only second-level Heavenly Emperor strength also dared to casually evaluate him. Really a goddamn idiot. Right at this moment, Long Aotian, who was beside Nie Tian, also opened his mouth. He was even more arrogant as he directly said, "What bullsh *t heaven-killing sect and broken sea sect? In my eyes they're all trash. Even if the two sect masters were to fight together, they wouldn't be able to withstand one punch from me." Long Aotian's pair of cold eyes revealed full contempt, looking straight at Shi Wushang and Duan Huanghai with a domineering and ferocious look. Furthermore, he did not avoid anyone at all, saying it for everyone to hear. When the insolent words fell, the scene immediately fell into a dead silence. Everyone looked at Long Aotian dumbfoundedly. The latter was indeed worthy of being the number one lunatic. These words were truly insolent. Amen. Duan Huanghai was taken aback once more. When he sensed Long Aotian's strength and then saw Long Aotian's appearance, he seemed to have thought of something, his eyes actually hesitating. Arrogant person, what high-sounding sentiments! Just as Duan Huanghai was hesitating, a furious voice sounded out. It was actually emitted by the handsome youth behind him. Duan Li. Bai Yunfei could not help exclaiming when he saw the handsome youth's face clearly. This person was none other than precisely the head of the Dongchuan region's four great young masters, young master Duan Li. Duan Li was the youngest among the four great young masters, but his strength was the strongest. He was the only fifth-level Heavenly Emperor powerhouse among the four. The other three were all fourth-level Heavenly Emperor strength. At this moment, Duan Li's face darkened as he let out a furious roar. His body moved immediately as he slapped out with his palm. A tremendous amount of power burst forth, causing a gigantic water screen to appear in the air. It was as though the entire space had frozen up as it crashed down towards Long Aotian like a horrifying tsunami. "Little bastard, you're courting death." How could Long Aotian tolerate a junior attacking him? With a roar, he punched out. The void suddenly sank, and a huge fist shadow whistled out, shattering the water curtain in the sky. "Arg!" A shrill scream sounded out. Young Master Duanli was directly sent flying out. Duan Huanghai's reaction was extremely swift. His figure flashed to catch Duanli, and he had an extremely anxious expression while his divine sense swiftly swept past Duanli. After he confirmed that Duanli was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. "Don't worry. He won't die." Long Aotian's face was full of contempt as he said, "I, Long Aotian, am not low enough to kill a junior." Young Master Duanli was indeed very strong. Unfortunately, his opponent was Long Aotian. With Long Aotian's strength, that punch earlier was enough to kill young Master Duanli on the spot. However, he would not do so. Killing a junior just like that was not his style. Nie Tian could also see that Long Aotian had held back too much in that punch earlier. As long as the latter used a little more strength, young Master Duan Li would be crippled even if he did not die. You are Long Outian. Duan Huang Hai only reacted at this moment. He exclaimed and looked at Long Outian with a face full of shock. No wonder he felt that the person in front of him was a little familiar, but he could not recall who it was. It turned out that it was Long Outian who had disappeared for 100 years. Long Outian's current appearance had changed compared to 100 years ago. He was much thinner and looked a little older. It was not strange that Duan Huang Hai could not recognize him. If Duan Huang Hai knew that Long Outian was here, he would not have spoken so arrogantly. Brother Long, my son was reckless and offended you. Please forgive him. Duan Huang Hai calmed down. His eyes flickered and he said very carefully. Everyone was taken aback. They did not expect that Duan Huang Hai, as the master of a sect, would actually take the initiative to apologize to Long Outian. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth smiled slightly. This Duan Huang Hai was still considered sensible and knew how to endure silently. Duan Huang Hai's strength was 8th level Heavenly Emperor, but his aura was stronger than Shi Wushang's. His combat strength was above Shi Wushang's. Hence, he could treat Shi Wushang coldly. But he was absolutely not Long Outian's match. In front of the latter, he could only be respectful. Don't fucking worm your way up to me. If I had a brother like you, wouldn't I be ashamed to death? But Long Outian did not fall for this at all and directly reproached, you were still King coming here for the Heaven-Earth Spirit Pool arrogantly just now. Why did you suddenly become a coward now? Duan Huang Hai's face flushed red but did not dare to refute anything. Nie Tian gave Long Outian a glance, indicating for the latter to stop. Really forcing Duan Huang Hai into a corner was not too good either. Nie Tian. At this time Lin Yi stood up. His entire person already recovered and was in high spirits, his condition very good. When Nie Tian saw that Lin Yi already recovered, he ignored Duan Huang Hai and the rest and asked directly, can we start now? He already could not wait, just waiting for Lin Yi. Can. Lin Yi nodded slightly. Nie Tian similarly smiled. Then, his gaze swept across everyone and said, everyone listen up, I know that you all want to enter the Gate of the Void. But the Gate of the Void has very strong space-time pressure inside. If we want to enter, we must weaken the space-time pressure. We need everyone's help to weaken the space-time pressure together. Weakening the space-time pressure, Nie Tian and Lin Yi were the main force. But the others could not be idle either. Everyone present were Heavenly Emperor Realm martial artists. Their auras were sufficient to change the power of heaven and earth. This was very helpful in weakening the space-time pressure. Everyone looked at Nie Tian with puzzled faces, expressing doubt one after another. Clearly, they did not trust Nie Tian. Didn't you all hear what my big brother said? At this time, Long Outian stepped forward and roared angrily. His voice was like a clap of thunder. A massive pressure surged towards everyone. Everyone felt heavy pressure. Want to enter the Gate of the Void, we'll have to listen to him. The next instant, Heartless also stepped forward and spoke solemnly. But what his entire body released was ice-cold killing intent, making people feel suffocated. Duan Huang Hai and Shi Wushang were both smart people and immediately understood. They said at the same time, tell us then, what do you want us to do? Very good. Nie Tian smiled faintly, very satisfied. Long Outian, Heartless, Duan Huang Hai, Shi Wushang, 4 8th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists all stepped forward. The others naturally did not dare to object anymore, expressing their willingness to listen to the command one after another. Want to enter the Gate of the Void as soon as possible, everyone must be united. Nie Tian no longer hesitated, activating the holographic divine vestige. Very soon, a holographic projection of several tens of thousands of meters appeared in his mind. He sensed the direction of the power of heaven and earth. Countless light spots appeared on the holographic projection. Immediately, Nie Tian's entire body released countless streaks of sword chi, releasing them like starlight, suspending in the surrounding space. All of the sword chi connected together and actually condensed into a massive grand array. A weak but stable array formation power was released. Chapter 1147. The 9 Palace Spirit Array. Very good. As soon as Nye Tian finished setting up the array, Elder Jian's voice rang out with a rare praise. Nye Tian had set up the 9 Palace Spirit Array, a very ancient array that could reverse the power of heaven and earth. However, he had only set up the framework of the array. If he wanted the array to operate, he would need the cooperation of the people in front of him. Nye Tian, who are you? Lin Yi looked at the 9 Palace Spirit Array above his head, his eyes narrowing as he spoke in a heavy voice. The stronger Nye Tian was, the more determined Lin Yi was to kill him. Everyone, I have marked the various positions of the array with sword aura. Please enter the array. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said to the crowd. The crowd was stunned at first, but no one dared to enter the array first. Seeing this scene, Nye Tian couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that these people still didn't trust him. I'll go first. At this moment, a clear voice rang out. Immediately after, a figure leaped into the air, stepped into the 9 Palaces formation, and stood at the position marked by Nye Tian. By Xiaofei. Nye Tian saw the person's face and smiled slightly. He didn't expect that Bai Xiaofei would be the first to stand up and support him. Bai Xiaofei's primordial spirit was very strange. He felt a powerful aura from the 9 Palace Spirit Array, so he believed in Nye Tian's methods. We'll go too. Then 2 more voices rang out. The figures of Bai Yunfei and Bai Xiaoye jumped up and appeared not far from Bai Xiaofei. With the appearance of the 3 siblings, the entire 9 Palace Spirit Array produced a powerful aura and the power of the array increased by a lot. Next, everyone fought to be the first to leap up and appear on top of the great array. Teacher, I'll go too. Shui Yong said and also stepped into the array. Ao Tian, wait a moment. At this time, Long Aotian also wanted to go over, but he was stopped by Nye Tian. The latter then looked at Heartless, Duan Huanghai, and Shi Wushang, indicating for them to wait. The 4 of them didn't know what Nye Tian was going to do, but they still waited patiently. A moment later, thousands of cultivators appeared above the array. As they released their auras, the entire 9 Palace Array slowly began to revolve. The momentum of the heavens and earth changed as 9 space passages appeared in the void. Although they couldn't be seen, they could clearly be felt. Good move. At this time, Lin Yi understood what Nye Tian meant. Nye Tian used the 9 Palaces formation to create 9 spatial tunnels, and these 9 tunnels all led to the gate to the void. When the space-time pressure in the gate to the void was released, it would escape through the 9 spatial tunnels. In this way, there was no doubt that it would greatly increase the speed at which the space-time pressure was weakened, and it was guaranteed that it would succeed. There was a certain risk in using Nye Tian and Lin Yi's Dragon Chi to weaken the space-time pressure of the gate to the void. But with the addition of the 9 Palace Array, it was guaranteed to succeed 100%. Nye Tian set up a 9 Palace Array and used the power of thousands of Heavenly Emperor Realm martial artists. This kind of means was really terrifying. The 4 of you, your positions are at the very top. At this time, Nye Tian pointed to the position at the very top of the array. It was actually only a few hundred meters away from the door to the void. The space-time pressure in that place was already very great. Ordinary Heavenly Emperor Realm martial artists could not bear it. But to 8th level Heavenly Emperor Realm martial artists, there was no pressure. The 4 of them nodded at the same time, then leaped up, their figures appearing in the 4 key positions of the 9 Palace Array. Looks like those 2 positions are left for us. Lin Yi saw that the 2 positions at the outermost edge of the array were where the entire array was slanted. The power of heaven and earth also gathered there. It was precisely the core position of the 9 Palace Array. Nye Tian nodded slightly and directly flew over in the air. Lin Yi followed closely behind. Boom! As the 2 people appeared in the array, the entire array suddenly let out a roar. An incomparably huge array power spread out, pervading the void. Like an invisible giant hand, it stretched towards the door to the void not far away. The four of you must withstand the pressure of the door to the void. Nie Tian raised his head and glanced at Long Outyen four people at the top. His eyes could not help but be a little nervous. Big brother, don't worry. Long Outyen, will definitely have no problem. Long Outyen laughed wildly, very confident. The other three people also nodded one after another. Even if they were not Nie Tian's friends, in order to enter the door to the void, they were willing to listen to the command. Let's begin. Exhaling a turbid breath, Nie Tian glanced at Lin Yi and no longer hesitated. His entire body slowly surged with mighty dragon qi. At the same time, Lin Yi also released the red 5-yang dragon qi. The two dragon qis slowly permeated and gradually merged together, merging into a reddish-gold dragon qi behind the two of them. Immediately, the reddish-gold dragon qi surged out and automatically poured into the 9 space passages. Then, like a long snake, it rushed towards the door to the void. The moment the dragon qi snake approached the door to the void, it immediately stirred up a terrifying power of time and space. The invisible power was extremely violent, and it actually tore the dragon qi snake apart. However, the escaping dragon qi was like a maggot in the bone, penetrating into the door to the void. Boom! The next moment, the door to the void was stimulated and suddenly shook. A terrifying pressure of time and space was released, directly rushing towards the array of 9 palaces fiercely. Long Outyen and the other 3 people were the closest to the door to the void, so they bore the brunt of the pressure. The 4 of them felt a terrible pressure coming from all directions. They could not avoid it at all, so they could only bear it. Fortunately, the 4 of them were strong enough to withstand the impact of the pressure of time and space. Nie Tian raised his head and glanced at the 4 of them. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Beside him, Lin Yi also had a look of horror on his face. The pressure of time and space of this door to the void was very strong, which was beyond Nie Tian's expectations. Fortunately, he had set up the array of 9 palaces. Otherwise, with just his and Lin Yi's strength, they would not be able to withstand the pressure of the door to the void. At this moment, with Long Outyen and the others bearing the pressure of time and space for Nie Tian and Lin Yi, the 2 of them were in good condition. Next, the 2 of them released even more violent dragon qi. After merging, it turned into a terrifying dragon qi snake, attacking the door to the void. This time, the resistance of the door to the void was more intense. The terrible pressure of time and space spread out, directly pressing on Long Outyen and the others. Ah! Immediately, a scream was heard. It was Shi Wushang. He seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure of time and space, and his body was oppressed until it was deformed. Shi Wushang was originally the weakest among the 4 of them. Previously, he had been seriously injured by Nie Tian and Lin Yi, so he had not fully recovered. Therefore, it was very difficult for him to withstand the terrible pressure of time and space. Oh no! Nie Tian saw that Shi Wushang could not withstand the pressure, and his eyes darkened. He knew that things were not good. Shi Wushang's position was very important. If he was not there, the pressure of time and space would directly descend on Nie Tian and Lin Yi. The 2 of them were too weak to withstand it. Chapter 1148. Profound Doppelganger. When Nie Tian saw that there was a doppelganger next to Long Outyen, his eyes narrowed. Then, his face lit up with joy. He had almost forgotten that Long Outyen was a bladesman who had reached the advanced level of Profound Saber. The strength of a profound doppelganger was comparable to a martial artist's body. However, it consumed a great deal of the martial artist's origin power. Even with Nie Tian's elementary level of profound sword, he could not condense a profound doppelganger. Get lost! Long Outyen roared. He controlled the doppelganger to take Shi Wushang's place. However, this way, he would have to bear even greater spacetime pressure. Aotian, hold on. Nie Tian nodded slightly and continued to release the dragon chi in his body. Next, the gate of the void continued to release spacetime pressure, but it was getting weaker and weaker. Phew! Nie Tian could feel that the spacetime pressure from the gate of the void had weakened. He could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. His expression was much more relaxed. As long as they could withstand the first few waves of pressure, the rest would be very easy. As Nie Tian and Lin Yi released more and more dragon chi, the gate of the void became weaker and weaker. After about an hour, the pressure from the gate of the void had weakened to a very obvious level. It's about time. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up. He muttered, "It's time to open the gate of the void." Then, he glanced at Lin Yi. The latter understood. The two of them released an even greater amount of dragon chi at the same time. After merging, it actually condensed into a giant reddish-gold dragon, which directly rushed toward the gate of the void. What are they doing? When the crowd saw this, they could not help but tremble. They did not know what Nie Tian and Lin Yi were going to do. Were they going to destroy the gate of the void? Everyone, get ready. We're going to enter another world. Before anyone could react, Nie Tian's voice rang out with great excitement. Boom! Immediately after, the golden dragon bombarded the gate of the void. After a muffled sound, the gate of the void trembled violently, and a crack appeared. Under the gaze of countless pairs of eyes, the crack expanded infinitely. Suddenly, an enormous force surged out, as if a boundless giant beast had opened its invisible mouth and pounced towards the 9 palaces' great array. In an instant, everyone felt a blinding light appear, forcing them to close their eyes. In the next instant, the space-time crack that emerged from the gate to the void enveloped the 9 palaces' great array. The entire 9 palaces' great array disappeared into thin air and entered the gate to the void. Within the 9 palaces' great array, everyone felt as if time and space were shifting. Suddenly, they felt as if their souls were being torn apart, and their consciousness was temporarily knocked out. In the blink of an eye, everyone woke up. When they opened their eyes once more, they discovered that they were still within the 9 palaces' grand formation. However, their surroundings had changed completely. Everyone looked at the completely unfamiliar world in front of them and were petrified, unable to react for a long time. This was a very strange space. There were huge glaciers everywhere on the ground, and bone-chilling coldness gushed out from the bottom. High up in the sky, there was a fiery red sky. The sky was actually burning, and it was filled with an endless sea of fire. Those were real flames, real and solid, releasing a blazing hot aura. This kind of environment was too strange. There were glaciers on the ground, and a sea of fire in the sky. It was simply the legendary ice and fire heaven. What was even more strange was that there was a very clear separation between the worlds of ice and fire. Someone just happened to appear on the line between ice and fire. His upper body was incomparably hot, and his lower body was bone-chilling. This feeling was too strange. It was as if his lower body was standing in a bucket of ice, and his upper body was being roasted by a raging fire. Fortunately, most of them had the strength of the heavenly emperor realm. Their martial bodies were strong enough to withstand this extreme test of ice and fire. Nie Tian was stunned for a long time before he finally reacted. He was in the position where ice and fire separated. His upper body was burning hot, and his lower body was freezing cold. However, his martial body was strong enough to withstand this feeling of extreme ice and fire. "Looks like we have arrived at an alternate dimension," Nie Tian murmured as he felt the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual energy was obviously much denser. He could not help but raise the corner of his mouth. However, what surprised him was that there seemed to be only 2 types of heaven and earth spiritual energy here. One was ice attribute and the other was fire attribute. There were no other attributes of heaven and earth spiritual energy. Moreover, the space-time aura here was very strong. It was obviously more stable than the Heaven Realm's celestial realm. This was definitely a higher-level world than the upper plane. However, this world was really a little too strange. As far as the eye could see, there was only ice and fire. There was not the slightest breath of life. At this moment, most of them came to their senses and looked at their surroundings in astonishment. Nye Tian directly removed the 9 palaces' great array. Immediately, the feeling of extreme ice and fire became more obvious. The meridians in his lower body seemed to be frozen, and the meridians in his upper body were almost boiling. "What is this place?" someone asked in surprise. He did not know where he was at all. His eyes flashed with great fear. Someone asked, but no one answered because no one knew where they were. "Big brother." At this time, Long Outyen walked over and called out to Nye Tian. "Outyen, are you okay?" Nye Tian saw that Long Outyen's face was a little pale and asked with concern. Long Outyen used the profound doppelganger and consumed a large amount of origin energy. In addition to the impact of the spacetime pressure, his condition was not very good. "I'm fine." Long Outyen looked like he did not care. He smiled and said, "What the hell is this place? It's cold below and hot above. It's so comfortable." Nye Tian was speechless. Long Outyen still had the mood to joke at this time. This should be a sealed space. However, there is only ice and fire. It's very strange. Nye Tian murmured. His eyes looked into the distance. Suddenly, he discovered that in the distant sky there was actually a floating mountain. He did not see wrongly. It was indeed a mountain that was floating in the air. Moreover, there were actually many trees on the mountain. It was completely different from the surrounding world of ice and fire. It seemed out of place. "Look, what's that?" At this time, the others also discovered the mountain in the air. They all cried out in surprise, and their voices became very excited. A mountain floating in the air. This was too strange. "Let's go there first." Nye Tian was also very excited. He wanted to go to the floating mountain to take a look. Perhaps the spiritual pool of heaven and earth was in that mountain. Long Outyen. However, at this time, a cold voice rang out. Then, a wave of killing intent gushed out and enveloped Nye Tian and Long Outyen. Nye Tian was slightly stunned. He slowly turned around, and a pair of cold eyes already stared at him and Long Outyen. It was Broken Desolation Sea. And beside Broken Desolation Sea, Shi Wushang also glared like a tiger watching its prey. His whole body was full of killing intent. So anxious to make a move already? Nye Tian smiled bitterly. He knew that Broken Desolation Sea and the others would not give up just like that. He did not expect that they would turn hostile so quickly. They had just arrived at the world of ice and fire, and they could not wait to kill. Chapter 1149. Alternate Dimension, World of Ice and Fire. Desolate Splitting Sea and Shi Wushang stood side by side, 2 pairs of cold eyes staring fixedly at Long Outyen. In their eyes, Long Outyen was the greatest threat. As long as they killed this person, Nye Tian was nothing to fear. Although Nye Tian's strength was strange and his means were heaven-defying, his strength was too weak after all. In Desolate Splitting Sea and Shi Wushang's eyes, he was still not considered a threat. When the crowd saw that the 2 great sect masters wanted to fight with Long Outyen, they all reacted with excited faces, their gazes carrying intense heat. 3 8th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists fighting, regardless of who won or lost, it was a good thing for the others. Because this way there would be one less powerful competitor. 2 little grasshoppers, are you getting impatient already? Long Outyen faced Desolate Splitting Sea and Shi Wushang 2 people. His pale face revealed a hint of gloominess, his entire body releasing a burst of rage. If he had long known that Shi Wushang was so shameless, he should not have saved him back then and let him be crushed to death by the space-time pressure inside the 9 palaces' grand array. "Teacher!" Shui Yong's figure appeared and stood beside Long Outyen, a nervous look on his face. Big brother, you and little Yong leave first. Leave this place to me. Long Outyen said in a low voice, a pair of cold eyes locked tightly onto the two great sect masters, guarding against the two people at all times. At this time, Nye Tian looked at Heartless and Lin Yi not far away. If Heartless also made a move at this time, then it would be very dangerous. With Long Outyen's strength, even if his essence energy was insufficient, dealing with desolate splitting sea and sure wushang was also no problem. But if Heartless made a move, then it would be terrible. Shui Yong, you leave first. No time to think too much, Nye Tian said solemnly, letting Shui Yong leave first. Shui Yong hesitated for a bit, but still decided to leave first. He could not help much by staying here. Ancestor, no need to care about them. Finding the heaven and earth spirit pool is more important. On the other side, Lin Yi's voice sounded out. Following that, his figure leaped, directly flying towards the floating mountain in the air. Heartless hesitated for a moment. This was a good opportunity for him to make a move to kill Long Outyen. But when he looked at the floating mountain, his eyes flickered, and he still decided to search for the heaven and earth spirit pool first. As long as he could find the spirit pool one step ahead and use the spirit pool to increase his strength and reach the 9th level Heavenly Emperor as soon, he could reach the 9th level Heavenly Spirit Pool as. With this thought in mind, Zhu Qing no longer hesitated. He soared into the sky and flew towards Lin Yi. When everyone saw that Lin Yi and the others had already gone over, they naturally didn't want to be left behind. They all flew towards the floating mountain. Long Outyen and the others' battles were exciting, but they were definitely not as tempting as the spiritual pool of heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, most of the several thousand people had left. Only the people from the Heaven Killing sect and the Broken Sea sect, as well as Nye Tian and Long Outyen, were left. Attack! The two great sect masters' faces fell. With a low roar at the same time, they attacked at the same time, directly blasting over toward Long Outyen. Sure, Wushang's silver wolf hand attacked again. Silver essence energy pounced out ferociously, condensing a silver sharp claw in space. But it did not appear to have much power, pouncing over toward Long Outyen ferociously. Splitting Sea's palm smacked down. What appeared in the air was actually a handprint condensed from a water screen. The power was still insufficient, only several hundred meters in size. It was completely not the power that 8th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists should have. When the others saw this scene, they were stunned, not knowing what was going on. It seemed like splitting Desolate Sea and Sure Wushang two people's strengths became weak. This degree of attacking was virtually only equivalent to Deva Realm martial artists. The space-time here is indeed bizarre. Nye Tian's gaze turned intent slightly. He already discerned that it was not that the two great sect masters' strengths became weak, but that the pressure of the surrounding space was too great. Coupled with the suppression of ice and fire spiritual power, it caused essence energy to be suppressed, unable to erupt with powerful power. Too trash, such strength and also want to kill your father? Long Outyen laughed coldly. With a furious roar, the 8 desolate ghost bone attacked. Surging 8 desolate ghost chi was released. A sinister ghost claw appeared, but the power was similarly insufficient. Rumble! In the void, 3 surges of energy collided with a loud bang. A muffled sound. Berserk energy exploded. Below the space actually condensed chunks of enormous ice, while above, terrifying flames rose up. This! Everyone looked at the scene in the sky with strange looks, dumbfounded with their eyes and mouths agape, not understanding what was going on. Nye Tian's brows also furrowed, faintly understanding something. This place was a world of ice and fire, two extremes. When the two kinds of heaven and earth spiritual power suffered the impact of other essence energy, they immediately became berserk. The world of ice below froze into ice cubes, while the world of fire above became even more violent and blazing. Arg! At this time, a scream sounded. A martial artist was pierced by an icicle below, and the lower half of his body was directly frozen. Immediately after, more screams sounded. Many martial artists in the world of ice were instantly frozen, turning into human-shaped ice sculptures. A chain reaction? Nie Tian was slightly stunned. His figure suddenly leaped up, entering the world of fire above. As Long Outyen and the two sect leaders exchanged blows, the impact of the essence energy actually created a chain reaction in the world of ice and fire. The space within 10,000 meters of the surrounding space seemed to be moved by an invisible force. The world below was instantly frozen, while the world above was boiling with flames, extremely violent. Where the power of ice and fire intersected, there was only a spatial line, but it was unusually obvious, separating the two forces, making it impossible for them to penetrate each other. Nie Tian activated the ultimate fire Scarlet Heaven battle armor to prevent the violent flames from invading, but his brows were tightly knitted. Just what kind of power was it to actually be able to create such a strange world? The worlds of ice and fire coexisted together because of a spatial line separating them. The other martial artists leaped out of the world of ice one after another. But many people's strengths were lacking. Entering the world of fire, they were directly incinerated by the violent flames. The chain reaction caused by the impact of essence energy was too terrifying. The destructive power of the two worlds of ice and fire erupted together. Ordinary Heavenly Emperor realm martial artists could not withstand it at all. Nie Tian reckoned that this kind of impact of the power of ice and fire, one needed to at least have 4th-level Heavenly Emperor strength to be able to withstand it. Although he only had 2nd-level Heavenly Emperor strength, his martial body was powerful. Most importantly, he had the power of stars, virtually able to suppress any power. Even if the power of ice and fire was very strong, it was also hard to seep into his martial body. But the rest of the Heaven Murder Sect and Broken Sea Sect's people were miserable. In a blink of an eye, several dozen people practically died. Only a few 4th-level and 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists survived. What's going on here? Desolate Splitting Sea and Shi Wushang's bodies trembled, dispersing the impact of ice and fire around them, but their expressions were incredibly shocked. They were 8th-level Heavenly Emperor strength and naturally did not fear the power of ice and fire. But they did not know what was going on in front of them. Ha ha! When Long Outyen saw that the two sex people were pretty much dead all at once, he could not help laughing wildly and said, "This punch didn't kill you two small fries, but killed a bunch of small shrimps. It's also pretty good." Chapter 1150. The chain reaction of the world of ice and fire was too terrifying. Just the impact of the origin energy was enough to cause a terrifying explosion of power, instantly killing dozens of people. Duan Huanghai and Shi Wushang became cautious and didn't dare to act recklessly anymore. The atmosphere became a little strange. The chain force only disappeared after a long time. The ice in the world of ice slowly cracked and melted, finally recovering. The violent flames in the world of fire also became much more stable. When everyone saw this scene, they calmed down a little. Nie Tian frowned, and the holographic divine glyphs started to revolve. The world of ice and fire was too strange. He had to find out what exactly was going on. In the void, a formless divine sense slowly spread out, covering a radius of tens of thousands of meters, carefully sensing the power in the space. But disappointingly, nothing appeared in the holographic projection. There was only the strange heaven and earth spiritual energy in the void. It can't be like this. It can't be so simple. Nie Tian frowned. He didn't believe that the world of ice and fire was formed naturally. There must be some kind of power supporting it. Calm down. Nie Tian roared in his heart. He forced himself to calm down and closed his eyes, focusing all his attention on the holographic divine glyph. In his divine sense, the power of the divine glyphs slowly spread out and merged with the space. Both Nye Tian's body and mind relaxed as he gradually entered a mysterious world. What is he doing? When the others saw Nye Tian closing his eyes with a gentle expression, they were all stunned. Long Aotian also frowned. He didn't know what Nye Tian was doing. And at this moment, two pairs of cold eyes locked onto Nye Tian. Their eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. It was young Master Godslayer and young Master Duan Li. Nye Tian spread out his divine sense and entered a mysterious state. When the holographic divine glyphs completely merged with the space, he finally discovered something. The aura of a formation. Nye Tian's heart trembled. He felt a huge formation force in the space, and the ice and fire spiritual energy gradually revealed its true appearance. It was some strange runes. Nye Tian carefully identified the runes in the formation, and immediately confirmed that this was a type of spirit power. Another type of spirit power. No wonder this world is so strange. It turns out to be an ice and fire grand array condensed from spirit E-force. Nye Tian was extremely shocked in his heart, and his whole person became excited. He finally understood why this world of ice and fire could exist. It turned out that this entire alternate dimension was a grand array formed by divine power. The reason why there were only two attributes of heaven and earth spiritual energy in this space was because the large formation was operating, and the other attributes of heaven and earth spiritual energy were forcibly converted to ice and fire spiritual energy. Nye Tian did not know the name of the array, so he could only temporarily call it the ice and fire array. What shocked him the most was that the power in this formation was actually the spirit bright force. He already knew that the spirit intent force was a type of energy that surpassed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Not only that, he had already seen different types of spirit intent force. The sword imprint, holographic divine imprint, thunderbolt divine imprint, all of them were spirit intent force. However, this was the first time he had seen a spiritual formation formed by the spirit intent force. The spirit intent force was indeed powerful. A grand array that created a world of ice and fire was truly terrifying. Inside the ice and fire grand array, the flowing runes are the divine imprints of ice and fire. Nye Tian sensed the power of the runes in the space, and his eyes burned with unconcealable desire. If he could obtain the power of the divine imprints of ice and fire, Nye Tian believed that his strength would increase exponentially, and he might even be able to master the ice and fire grand array. Thinking of this, Nye Tian was beyond excited, and his body couldn't help but tremble. Die for me. Just at this moment, two cold voices rang out and merged together. Two silhouettes made their moves at the same time, and two waves of energy howled out and pressed towards Nye Tian. The ones who made their moves were none other than young Master Shin Slayer and young Master Duan Li. The two of them had been observing Nye Tian for a long time, and realized that the latter was completely immersed in other things, and had no defense. This was the best time for them to make their move. Their timing was very good and their speed was very fast. In the space, a golden handprint and a tumbling curtain of water suddenly pressed towards Nye Tian. "Big brother, watch out!" Long Outyin couldn't help but scream at this scene. His attention was always on Desolate Sea and Shi Wushang, and he didn't expect young Noble God Slayer and young Noble Duan Li to suddenly make their move. He wanted to make a move, but it was too late. At this moment, Nye Tian was in a state of excitement, and all his attention was on the ice and fire grand array. Almost at the same time the two made their move, the projection already showed the scene of the attack. Nye Tian reacted immediately, and the meteor wings appeared on his back. With a flap of the wings, his silhouette flickered. Boom! Boom! The golden handprint's huge curtain of water almost brushed past Nye Tian, and the surging momentum created a huge pressure, causing his body to tremble and spurt out a mouthful of blood. Young Noble Duan Li and young Noble God Slayer saw that Nye Tian was injured, and their faces were not filled with joy, but shock and confusion. They didn't expect Nie Tian's reaction to be so fast, and it was far beyond their expectations. Just now, Nie Tian clearly didn't notice the two of them, and they were only a few hundred meters away from Nie Tian. They attacked at such a close distance, and it was a surprise, but he actually dodged it. It was really strange. Nie Tian's figure froze in midair, and his whole body had already activated the extreme fire Scarlet Heaven battle armor. The surrounding raging flames were all blocked by the battle armor. This time, the chain reaction was obviously not as terrifying as before. It seemed that the stronger the impact, the stronger the chain reaction. Young Noble God Slayer and young Noble Duan Li's strength was not on the same level as the two sect masters, so the chain reaction was not strong. Nie Tian wiped the blood off the corner of his mouth, looked at the two of them, and heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had the holographic divine pattern and the meteor wings, or else he wouldn't have been able to dodge that attack. These two people clearly wanted to kill him in one blow, so they spared no effort. If Nie Tian did not evade the attack just now, even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured right now. But Nie Tian still had a look of joy because he discovered an extremely important thing, the ice-fire divine pattern. Bastards, you're courting death. At this time, Long Outyen reacted to it and gave a deep roar, his entire person enraged. The aura of his entire body rose up and his figure moved. A dragon head treasure saber actually appeared in his hand. It was precisely his primordial spirit, dragon slaying slash. Proud heaven! When Nie Tian saw this scene, his expression fell with fright. He wanted to stop Long Outyen, but it was already too late. Long Outyen was thoroughly enraged this time, to actually use primordial spirit. He was a saber wielder at the high-rank saber profound realm. The moment the dragon-slaying slash was unleashed, it was sufficient to contend with 9th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. Young Noble God Slayer and young Noble Duan Li felt an extremely surging aura pressing over. The terrifying aura of death immediately made them have a feeling of suffocation, frightened until their faces turned pale as paper. Chapter 1151. Long Outyen's face was grim, his eyes austere. His entire body's aura was like mountains and seas. Even under the suppression of ice and fire, it still gave people a majestic and mighty sense of oppression. Dragon-slaying art, ghostly slaughter strike. Without any hesitation, Long Outyen's dragon-slaying slash down. A majestic saber intent bloomed in the space. A terrifying power wreaked havoc in the space, assaulting the ice-fire divine vestige. Rumble! The saber intent instantly exploded in the space. A horrifying saber image appeared and actually directly made the surrounding flame power become berserk. Violent flames surged on the entire saber image, crushing over toward young Master God Slayer and young Master Duanli. The power of this saber was Long Outyen's full power. Even ordinary 9th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists would find it hard to receive it head-on. Without a doubt, if young Master God Slayer and young Master Duanli were hit, they would die without a doubt. No! At virtually the same time, Desolate Sea Splitting and Shi Wushang cried out at the same time. The two people exchanged a glance and attacked at the same time, releasing the aura around them and actually fused together. Immediately, a terrifying pressure spread out. Heaven-murdering sea splitting palm. The two people attacked at the same time, shouting loudly. Following that, essence energy condensed. A terrifying palm appeared. It was actually 1,000 meters in size, causing the entire void to tremble. That palm phantom came out with a loud bang, like a sky curtain pressing over, attempting to block Long Outyen's fatal blow. Crap! Seeing this scene, Nie Tian's eyes trembled, his face suddenly falling. Desolate Sea Splitting and Shi Wushang clearly used a combination martial technique. It was very terrifying. The two of them were former senior and junior brothers. Knowing a combination martial technique was not strange. The two of them were both 8th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. A combination martial technique was sufficient to pose a threat to 9th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. Nie Tian suddenly understood at this time why Shi Wushang called Desolate Sea splitting over. It turned out that the two of them could release a combination martial technique together. But this was not the most important thing. The most terrifying thing was that such a powerful force impact would trigger a powerful chain reaction from the ice-fire divine vestige. That was virtually fatal. Rumble! In the next moment, the horrifying shadow of the blade fell and directly bombarded the shadow of the palm. In an instant, a powerful force exploded, turning into an endless impact that wreaked havoc in the space. In Nie Tian's projection, he could clearly see that every wave of energy that struck the divine rune of ice and fire caused the rune to go berserk. Waves of terrifying rune aura were released, and the entire world of ice and fire instantly became violent and seething. Chi chi chi. In the space, with the impact of the terrifying power, there was an extremely ear-piercing sound, as if the world was about to be torn apart. Crack, crack, crack. When the impact force surged in the ice world, the space within tens of thousands of meters was instantly frozen, and a bone-chilling aura spread out. It was enormous and terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. In the sky above, the terrifying power of fire became more violent, and the scorching aura caused the space to burn. Nie Tian's nerves were taut, but he suddenly realized something, and his expression changed. On the holographic projection in his mind, countless ice elemental divine runes connected together, instantly condensing into the shape of a dragon, and the fire elemental divine runes also intertwined, condensing into a giant bird. Nie Tian's eyes trembled violently, and he felt that two terrifying forces had suddenly appeared in the ice and fire formation. Almost without any hesitation, Nie Tian activated his Deva domain, Dragon Scale Shield, and the heaven-shrouding totem appeared. He also formed a seal with his hands, which was the 3 seals of the god of war. He felt that an extremely terrifying power was about to erupt. Rumble! At this moment, the world of ice below suddenly shook violently, as if a huge monster was moving in the ice. Nie Tian looked down at his feet, and he saw that within the ice, an ice dragon that was nearly 10,000 meters long had appeared, directly breaking through the endless layers of ice, and directly charging towards the world of fire. The others also saw the huge ice dragon, and their eyes became dull. Everyone came to their senses and tried to escape into the sky. Rumble! And at the same time, a rumble also sounded out above the sky. Everyone looked up and saw an incomparably massive flaming bird swooping down from the sky. The surging aura was violent and direct, and the surrounding space directly turned into a boundless sea of fire. The blazing to the extreme flame aura wreaked havoc. Everyone felt the terrifying power spreading over, but they could not resist it and could only forcefully endure it. At this time, a heart-wrenching scream sounded out. A 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist actually directly burned up, instantly turning into ashes. Immediately, even more screams sounded out. The bodies of the few remaining 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists were all burning up. Shrill screams resounded in the space of fire. Leave. Duanhuang Hai and Shi Wushang saw that the situation was not good. Their figures moved, flying over and rescuing young Master Duanli and young Master God Slayer respectively, then flew towards that huge mountain floating in the sky. Aotian. Nie Tian saw that Long Aotian's complexion was pale. Clearly, his essence energy was already depleted. He could not help crying out, flapping his wings and flying over. Long Aotian's essence energy was insufficient to begin with. Coupled with his violent rage earlier, using his primordial spirit and going all out in that all-out attack, he did not even have any essence energy left at this time. Nie Tian grabbed Long Aotian, the 2 wings on his back flapping frenziedly, wanting to leave. Rumble! Right at this time, that ice dragon under the ice layer actually broke out of the ice. Immediately, the entire stretch of space started trembling violently. Nye Tian distinctly sensed that ice and fire dividing line actually broke apart instantly, being crushed by the ice dragon. At the same time, the fire phoenix in the sky also swooped down. A scorching aura descended on the ice surface. The ice surface started cracking and melting on a large scale. A destructive aura spread out in the space, as if doomsday had arrived. Ice Dragon, Fire Phoenix, these are the guardians of the Fire and Ice Array. Once the array is under attack, the Ice Dragon and Fire Phoenix will appear. Nye Tian immediately understood, his eyes trembling violently. The power of the Ice Dragon and Fire Phoenix was too terrifying, they actually broke through the ice and fire dividing line. Bang! At this time, the terrifying power of ice and fire collided with each other, creating a terrifying shockwave visible to the naked eye, spreading out in all directions. Big brother, don't worry about me. Long Outyen felt the terrifying power and shouted, "Let's go!" There was no way Nye Tian would abandon Long Outyen at this time. His whole body burst out, the heaven-shrouding totem instantly spread out, enveloping Long Outyen within. At the same time, he slapped out with his palm, using the 3 seals of the divine god of war simultaneously, 3 enormous forces bombarded towards Long Outyen. Nye Tian did not care about anything else. His wings flapped, and he flew up into the sky with Long Outyen. Bang bang bang! Behind him, endless muffled sounds rang out. The heaven-shrouding totem instantly shattered, and the 3 seals of the divine god of war were also directly shattered. Nye Tian's body trembled slightly, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. On his palm, a white ball of starlight appeared, and directly bloomed, like a shield, enveloping him and Long Outyen. Chapter 1152. Nye Tian brought Long Outyen and retreated rapidly. A layer of white halo appeared around the two of them, like a shield, enveloping them. This was the shield that Nye Tian created using morning star daybreak. He condensed almost all the power of stars, hoping to block the impact of the terrifying air wave. Fortunately, Nye Tian had secretly started to condense the power of stars beforehand. Otherwise, he could only wait to be engulfed by the air wave now. Boom! In the void, the collision of ice and fire formed a terrifying air wave that surged over. The momentum of the raging waves seemed to want to tear heaven and earth apart and engulf it. Bang! Chi-chi-chi! A violent muffled sound, the terrifying air wave bombarded the astral shield, and actually started to penetrate, tear, and engulf. But this bought some time for Nye Tian. His figure was extremely fast. In just a blink of an eye, he had already flown tens of thousands of meters away. The surging air wave finally weakened a little. The oppressive force bombarded Nye Tian, but it was not fatal. It was within the range that his martial physique could withstand. The wings behind Nye Tian flapped again, and he retreated several thousand meters, his figure standing in the void filled with flames. At this time, he was already out of the danger zone and completely safe. F***CK, what kind of power is this, so terrifying? Long Outyen's face was pale. Looking at the surging air wave under his feet, he revealed a very rare look of panic. The power of the ice and fire air wave was very terrifying, almost not inferior to the spatial storm. Fortunately, Nye Tian's speed was fast enough and avoided the direct impact. Otherwise, he and Long Outyen would definitely not have a corpse left. This degree of air wave impact, even peak Heavenly Emperor martial artists would be directly torn to shreds. Puff! At this time, Nye Tian looked at the air wave in the distance and was just about to open his mouth to speak, but his body trembled and he vomited a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as paper. Just now, in order to avoid the impact of the air wave, he activated all his defenses, using the 3 seals of the God of War, Heaven-Shrouding Totem, and Morning Star Daybreak, and only then did he barely survive. The essence energy consumption was huge, and the blood qi in his body became unstable. "Big brother, are you alright?" Long Outyen saw that Nye Tian vomited blood, and could not help but be nervous. "I'm fine." Nye Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. 2 spirit pills appeared in his hand. They were the 7 Revolutions Dragon Heart pills. He swallowed one himself and gave the other to Long Outyen. The 2 of them swallowed the 7 Revolutions Dragon Heart pill, and their complexions looked much better. However, the 7 Revolutions Dragon Heart pill was only used to recover elemental energy. If he wanted to maximize the medicinal power of the 7 Revolutions Dragon Heart pill, it was best to take it when he was in his best condition. If someone saw Nye Tian consume a Tier 9 spirit pill to recover his essence energy, they would definitely cry out that it was a waste. Although spirit pills like the Vitality Consolidating pill could also restore one's elemental energy, the medicinal effects were too weak and the recovery time was too slow. After taking the 7 Revolutions Dragon Heart pill, Nye Tian and Long Outyen's spirit energy would completely recover within half an hour. A grand formation formed from spirit intent energy is truly terrifying. Nye Tian couldn't help sighing as he watched the ice and fire chi waves gradually weaken. Bright spirit force? What's that? Long Outyen was stunned. He didn't know what Nye Tian was talking about. Nye Tian smiled faintly and didn't explain too much. The ice and fire world recovered its calm after a long time. That ice dragon and fire phoenix also gradually calmed down. One returned to the ice layer while the other returned to the fiery sky. They quickly disappeared. At this time, Nye Tian felt that the dividing line between the ice and fire world appeared again. The 2 powers returned to their original worlds and weren't compatible. What exactly is this dividing line? It actually completely separates the 2 extreme powers. Too strange. Nye Tian frowned. His divine sense sensed the dividing line between ice and fire. However, other than the void, he didn't find any abnormalities. He didn't give up. He carefully sensed it but still didn't find anything. It seemed that this dividing line was extremely strange. It directly separated the 2 powers. It should be some kind of space-time divine rune. Just as Nye Tian was puzzled, the Sword Elder's voice sounded. He was also puzzled and didn't seem too sure. Space-time divine rune. Nye Tian muttered. His eyes couldn't help but sink. The Sword Elder should be right. Since there was space-time attribute heaven and earth spiritual power, of course there was space-time divine rune. However, this strange space was indeed very strange. It turned out to be an ice and fire array. Then, who arranged this array and what was their purpose? These questions were too big. Nye Tian couldn't think of an answer at all. Space-time divine rune, a legendary thing, it actually exists. The Sword Elder looked at the surrounding ice and fire world. His eyes trembled as he said in shock. The dividing line between ice and fire was indeed a kind of space-time divine rune. It was rumored that the space-time divine rune was often used to create space-time restrictions in ancient times. It was a method to imprison God Realm warriors. This ice and fire array was indeed terrifying. The power of the ice dragon and fire phoenix could actually break through the space-time divine rune. This was something that even God Realm warriors couldn't do. Fortunately, Nye Tian dodged in time. Otherwise, he would have died. Big brother, those 2 little grasshoppers are still alive. At this time, Long Outyen suddenly exclaimed. He looked at the distant sky. 2 figures appeared. It was Duan Huanghai and Shi Wushang. The 2 of them actually didn't die. The 2 of them are really lucky. Nye Tian looked at the 2 of them and found that they each had a person in their hands. It was young Master Godslayer and young Master Duan Li. Duan Huanghai and Shi Wushang also escaped in time. They avoided the direct impact of the airwaves. However, young Master Godslayer and young Master Duan Li were seriously injured and were on the verge of death. The 2 of them also noticed Nye Tian and Long Outyen. After a cold glance, they didn't say anything. Instead, they flew towards the floating mountain. Nie Tian watched the two of them leave. He wasn't in a hurry. He waited until his essence force was more or less recovered before he flew towards the floating mountain. After a while, the two of them came to the sky about a few hundred meters away from the floating mountain. They looked down at the floating mountain with an expression of disbelief. This mountain was verdant and lush with trees. Looking from afar, it was full of vitality. It was completely different from the surrounding world of ice and fire. It seemed to belong to another world. It's the space-time divine rune that separates this mountain from the world of ice and fire. Nie Tian spread out his divine sense and immediately found that the mountain was at the boundary of ice and fire. Originally, there should be an iceberg below and a volcano above. However, the entire mountain was wrapped by the space-time divine rune, separating it from the world of ice and fire. The ice and fire grand array actually created such a dense mountain. This kind of method is really uncanny. Nie Tian couldn't help but praise after understanding everything. Without a doubt, the person who created the ice and fire grand array must be a divine realm spirit array master. Moreover, he was a space-time spirit array master. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to use space-time divine runes. Nie Tian, did you notice that this floating mountain is at the center of the world of ice and fire? At this time, the Sword Elder's voice sounded again, and he raised a strange question. Chapter 1153. Nie Tian discovered that the floating mountain was the center of the ice and fire world, but his eyebrows wrinkled even tighter. The Sword Elder wouldn't ask this question for no reason, there must be a reason. Sword Elder, you mean? The next moment, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something. His face suddenly changed, his eyes suddenly trembled, and his whole body was directly petrified, without the slightest reaction for a long time. Big brother, are you okay? Long Outian noticed that Nie Tian's expression was not right, and was stunned for a moment. The latter was like a piece of wood. His whole body was in a daze, without any reaction. Yes. After a long time, the Sword Elder's voice sounded again, and said, "What I mean is, this floating mountain is the eye of the ice and fire array." Eye of the array. These two words fell into Nie Tian's ears, like thunder, made his whole body suddenly tremble, and finally had a reaction. Just now, he thought of this, so he directly petrified. Since the ice and fire world was a large array, then there must be an eye of the array, and the floating mountain was located in the center of the ice and fire world. It was very likely that the eye of the array was located. Oh my God, using a mountain as the eye of the array, this is too terrifying. Nie Tian's heart screamed, his whole body was not calm. He had seen all kinds of large arrays, even those big sex protective arrays, which were inherited from the ancient times, did not shock him like this. A spiritual array created a different world of ice and fire, in the center of the world, a floating mountain, the eye of the array. Such a magnificent and terrifying method, it was really shocking. Not only was Nie Tian's face dull, even the Sword Elder's reaction was extremely shocked. The Sword Elder was in existence from the ancient times, he must have seen God Realm warriors, but such a huge spiritual array like the ice and fire world, it was absolutely the first time in his life, and subverted his understanding of martial arts. Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he looked at the floating mountain in front of him. His eyes were blazing, it was hard to describe. He suddenly felt that what appeared in front of him was not a mountain, but a whole new world that was so vast that it was unimaginable. Previously, Nie Tian thought that those who could create the Star Soul Tablet, the three-legged profound cauldron, or the Black Dragon Castle were already the pinnacle existences in the world. However, he now believed that there was no end to the path of martial arts. Creating a living spiritual weapon was nothing compared to this person who had created a world. There was no comparison at all. Only now did Nie Tian realize that the world he knew was so narrow. Long Outian watched from the side when he saw Nie Tian's shocked expression. He frowned, and he had no idea what Nye Tian was thinking. After a long time, Nye Tian finally calmed down and let out a long breath of impure air. His entire state of mind was completely different, and even his eyes seemed a bit brighter. "Big brother, are you okay?" Long Outyin looked at Nye Tian with a confused expression, not knowing what had happened. "I'm fine." Nye Tian faintly smiled and didn't explain anything. Long Outyin didn't even have a basic understanding of spiritual arrays, so explaining to him would just be a waste of time. "Let's go in." Nye Tian took a deep breath and felt the strong life aura released by the floating mountain. He couldn't help but feel refreshed, and his whole body became much sharper. "Okay." Long Outyin agreed. He had been waiting for this for a long time. His figure flashed, and he directly flew towards the floating mountain. Space-time divine runes could block the invasion of the power of ice and fire, but they had no effect on cultivators. "Damn! This feels so good." The moment Long Outyin's figure entered the floating mountain, he actually let out a strange cry, and he seemed very excited. "Is it really that exaggerated?" Nye Tian's mouth twitched slightly. He could feel that the heaven-earth spiritual qi inside the floating mountain was very rich, and the environment was no different from the outside world. However, Long Outyin's reaction seemed a little exaggerated. Nye Tian's figure moved, and he stepped into the floating mountain. The moment he entered, Nye Tian suddenly felt something, and his eyes flashed violently. He immediately understood, and his whole body stiffened. "Big brother, you broke through!" At this time, Long Outyin also discovered something and cried out in surprise, directly laughing wildly. "This floating mountain is too impressive. The heaven-earth spiritual qi is at least several dozen times richer than the heaven realm's divine realm." Nye Tian opened his mouth wide, but could not say the following words. He did not expect that he had just stepped into the floating mountain, and he actually directly broke through from second-level Heavenly Emperor to third-level Heavenly Emperor. Although he had just been peak second-level Heavenly Emperor cultivation, wanting to step into third-level Heavenly Emperor, if he cultivated bitterly, he would need at least several months. But directly advancing upon stepping into the floating mountain was seriously too bizarre. The heaven-earth spiritual qi here is too rich, imperceptibly creating an opportunity for you to advance in strength. There's nothing strange about it. Elder Sword's voice sounded out, but it was very calm. Nye Tian nodded his head subconsciously, forcing himself to calm down. He was still very excited in his heart. An increase in strength represented an increase in combat power. More importantly, Nye Tian could activate the third page of the Starry Sky Ancient Martial Formula and learn the third move of the Ancient Martial 9 forms. But he did not have time right now. After calming down a little, he still decided to find the others first, at least find Shui Yong first. Perhaps the others had already found the heaven and earth spiritual pool and were already bathing in the spiritual pool. Heaven and earth spiritual pool, that was a heaven and earth supreme treasure that could enhance a martial artist's martial body. "Outyin, let's go find the others first." Thinking up to here, Nye Tian hurriedly quickened his footsteps, walking towards the mountain forest. Walking in the forest, Nye Tian had a strange feeling, as if the aura of time and space in this place was very strange. Originally, the mountain didn't seem very large, but now it gave him a feeling of vastness and boundlessness. It was as if after he entered the floating mountain, this mountain was magnified infinitely. The internal space of the floating mountain was far larger than he imagined. Nye Tian and Long Outyin, the two of them, walked for a long time in the mountain forest and discovered very quickly that although this mountain was lush with trees and exuberant life aura, there were only trees and no spirit beasts. Forget about large-sized spirit beasts, there was not even a small-sized spirit beast. Furthermore, what was even stranger was that Nye Tian did not detect other people's auras. His current strength was third-level Heavenly Emperor, his mental strength reaching rank 93. With his current perception ability, It was sufficient to sense everything within several dozen kilometers around. But on the floating mountain, his perception ability was suppressed by an invisible force. He could actually only sense everything within several hundred meters around him. Only by using the holographic divine runes did his perception ability increase slightly. But it was also only able to sense things within 1,000 meters. Several thousand martial artists entered the floating mountain, like clay oxen entering the sea, vanishing without a trace. Big brother, where did all those people go? Long Outyen was already somewhat impatient and asked with a frown. Nie Tian shook his head. The holographic divine runes sensed the surroundings and did not discover any abnormalities. Hence, he directly asked Corpse Luo Fiend Sovereign, Corpse Luo, is this place an illusion? Nie Tian was worried that he would accidentally enter an illusion. Master, this place isn't an illusion. Corpse Luo Fiend Sovereign shook his head, very certain that everything in front of him was real and not an illusion. Chapter 1154. N. Suddenly hearing a panicked cry for help, Nie Tian was suddenly taken aback. This voice was very familiar. He immediately recalled that it was actually Bai Xiaoye of the Bai family's 3 siblings. Let's go over quickly. Nie Tian did not hesitate. His figure moved, sprinting wildly towards the place where the voice came from. Long Outyen was stunned. He did not know what had happened, because he did not hear anything at all. On the floating mountain, all martial artists' perception abilities suffered tremendous suppression. Nie Tian could hear the cries from several thousand meters away, but Long Outyen could not hear it at all. Several thousand meters away, in a canyon, several martial artists surrounded a young girl, their eyes releasing an evil glint. That young girl was none other than precisely Bai Xiaoye. Don't come over, my grandfather is the Artificers Association's president. If you dare to hurt me, he won't let you off. Bai Xiaoye was panicking to the extreme, her small face pale as paper, her beautiful eyes flickering with immense fear. She only had 9th-level heaven human strength, while the few people in front of her were all Heavenly Emperor realm martial artists. There were even 5th-level Heavenly Emperor powerhouses. In front of these people, she completely had no strength to retaliate. Hee. Those few martial artists had sinister smiles on their faces, emitting sinister laughter from their throats, their eyes flickering with sharp killing intent. Without any nonsense, the few martial artists instantly attacked, releasing a terrifying aura from their entire bodies, turning into a formless oppression, crushing towards Bai Xiaoye. Ah! Bai Xiaoye was frightened to the extreme, screaming out shrilly, even closing her eyes. Stop! Right at this time, a voice sounded out, following which a surge of sword intent attacked over. Vast and mighty sword shadows rolled out, blasting towards those few martial artists. Those few martial artists suddenly froze, then immediately turned around and made a move in unison, blocking the massive sword intent together. In the next instant, a figure landing beside Bai Xiaoye. It was precisely Nie Tian. Bai Xiaoye, are you all right? Nie Tian glanced at Bai Xiaoye, confirming that the latter was fine. His heart relaxed considerably. Nie Tian. Bai Xiaoye opened her eyes, and when she saw that the person in front of her was Nie Tian, she could no longer hold back her tears. Who are you people? Nie Tian didn't care about her. He looked at the martial artists in front of him and roared. They had entered the world of ice and fire together with Bai Xiaoye, and they had also entered the Hanging Mountain together, so it was unforgivable for them to harbor malicious intent toward her. Kill! However, these cultivators did not answer Nie Tian's question. Instead, they made a vicious sound from their throats and directly attacked. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. He didn't expect these people to be so arrogant. They even wanted to kill him. Since you're courting death, I'll grant your wish. Nie Tian let out a low roar and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He stabbed out with his sword, and a terrifying sword will bloomed in the air, instantly condensing into a mighty sword shadow that was 1,000 meters long. Thunder rumbled, and it was extremely sharp, pressing down on the people in front of him. This sword, Nyetian did not hold back in the slightest, going all out. Even if a 5th-level heavenly emperor forcefully resisted this sword, they would also be injured. He was a swordsman with 4 kinds of sword intents. Furthermore, his sword Dao realm reached the initial stage sword profound meaning. The power of one sword was very horrifying. Those few people were actually completely fearless when facing this destructive sword, attacking one after another. All kinds of powers rumbled over, but they were all annihilated under the mighty sword shadow. Arg! In the next instant, shrill screams sounded out. Those few people's figures directly flew out backward, colliding onto the surrounding cliff. Several of them died miserably on the spot. Only a 5th-level heavenly emperor martial artist still had a hint of aura. That person struggled to his feet, his entire body dripping with blood. He actually had a stunned look, panicking to the extreme as he shouted, "Where is this? Why am I here? Amen?" Seeing this scene, Nyetian's gaze turned intent slightly. It seemed like this person did not know what he was doing just now. At this time, Nyetian suddenly recalled that these few martial artists' expressions earlier were rather strange. Their eyes were suffused with killing intent, and at the same time, they were also very empty, as if they were people who were inflicted with a curse mark and were controlled by someone else. Nyetian detected that something was wrong. Divine sense probing over, he immediately discovered that there was actually a strange green power inside this person's body, like some kind of mycelium, actually spreading all over his body. Arg! Suddenly, that person let out a miserable howl and shouted, "So unbearable! Kill me, quickly kill me!" As that person screamed, he used both hands to tear at his body, and actually forcefully tore off all the skin on his body. Even the dripping white bones on his body were exposed. "Stop!" Nyetian roared angrily, releasing a surge of sword intent all over his body, wanting to suppress that person. Bang, bang, bang! But right at this time, countless green tentacles suddenly extended out from that person's body, directly tearing his body apart. That person instantly fell to the ground. Before he died, his eyes were filled with immense terror. Nyetian was stunned by the scene in front of him, and his eyes widened slightly. At this moment, green mycelium tentacles suddenly gushed out of that person's body, directly rushing towards Nyetian. Those green mycelium were very terrifying and actually condensed into a ghost face in mid-air, making ear-piercing hideous laughter, which looked extremely demonic. Nyetian reacted extremely quickly. He struck out with his sword, and the thunderbolt sword intent spread out like lightning, filling the air into a net of thunder and lightning, blasting over to that ghost face. Ha! Ha! The ghost face of mycelium seemed to feel some kind of danger, and screamed twice, trying to escape, but it was too late, and directly drowned by the net of thunder and lightning. Under the pressure of the thunderbolt sword intent, the ghost face of mycelium gradually condensed into a ball of mycelium the size of a thumb. Controlled by Nyetian, the net of thunder and lightning didn't directly destroy the ball of mycelium, but imprisoned it in it. What is this thing? Looking at the mycelium ball in front of him, Nyetian's eyes flashed violently. It seemed that this strange mycelium could invade a martial artist's body and control their divine sense, which was very terrifying. Nyetian carefully sensed, and found that outside the mycelium ball, there was a layer of green rune power surging, very demonic. At this moment, the mycelium ball suddenly made a sinister sound. "Brat, what kind of power is this? It can actually resist this king's soul-devouring mycelium." At this moment, the mycelium ball suddenly made a sinister sound, which was unusually ear-piercing. "Huh!" Nyetian's eyes suddenly trembled, and then he calmed down and said in a deep voice, "Who are you?" It was obvious that the soul-devouring mycelium was controlled by someone, and at this moment, it was the person behind it who was speaking. "You came to Floating Mountain, but you don't know who this king is. How ridiculous!" The voice sounded again, and then the rune on the soul-devouring mycelium disappeared, turned into a cloud of green gas, and directly dissipated. Huh! Nyetian felt that the person's aura had disappeared, and his expression couldn't help but become even more strange. Who is this person? Why did he appear here? Nyetian's heart was full of doubts, and the expression in his eyes gradually became complicated. It seemed that in this floating mountain, there was a very terrifying person. Big Brother! At this time, Long Outyen's figure finally appeared, and couldn't help but be stunned when he saw the few corpses on the ground, and then immediately saw Bai Xiaoye and exclaimed, "Is this little girl okay?" Chapter 1155. Nyetian looked back at Bai Xiaoye and frowned. Bai Xiaoye must have entered the floating mountain with Bai Yunfei and the others. Why was she alone? And why did she encounter these people who were controlled by the soul-devouring mycelium? After a while, Bai Xiaoye stood up. She was still in shock, but she looked better. Seeing that Bai Xiaoye had calmed down, Nyetian asked cautiously, "Bai Xiaoye, where are your brothers?" He was worried about Bai Yunfei and Bai Xiaofei. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left Bai Xiaoye alone. "My brothers!" Bai Xiaoye's eyes turned red when she heard Nyetian ask about Bai Yunfei and the others. She was about to cry again. "Little girl, don't cry anymore. Hurry up and tell us what happened. If something happened to your two brothers, you should tell us earlier so that we can save them." Long Outyen was already impatient and said coldly. Bai Xiaoye calmed down a lot after being yelled at. She began to tell them what happened after they came to the floating mountain. After they came to the floating mountain, they all wanted to find the spirit pool of heaven and earth, so they split up. Bai Xiaoye and the others were attacked by monsters. Her two brothers were taken away by the monsters when they tried to save her. Then she met these people in front of her. Monsters? Nyetian was speechless after hearing Bai Xiaoye's story. "My little grandaunt, can't you be more specific? What kind of monster is it?" Long Outyen was even more speechless and shouted loudly, "They are monsters." Bai Xiaoye thought that Nyetian didn't believe her, so her face immediately turned red. She said, "It's the monsters transformed from trees. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. They're so scary. Even Big Brother was captured by those trees." Monsters made by trees? Nyetian was even more speechless. But Bai Xiaoye looked serious. She couldn't say anything about the lives of Bai Yunfei and the others. Can trees really become spirits? Long Outyen's expression was conflicted. He still did not want to believe it. It was rumored that some level 9 spirit materials could develop their own consciousness, but to say that they could move freely like a martial practitioner was truly inconceivable. "Sword Elder, is this even possible?" Nyetian calmed down and asked in a heavy voice. The world was so big that nothing was too strange. Even the world of ice and fire existed, so it wasn't strange for trees to become spirits. Nyetian had read in an ancient book that there were many strange races in ancient times. Perhaps the monster Bai Xiaoye was talking about was an ancient race. It should exist. This time, the Sword Elder wasn't very sure. With a face full of hesitation, he said, "I have heard of an ancient race called the Gu Shuren clan. It is said that their bodies are made of trees." "Yes." Nyetian nodded before turning to Bai Xiaoye. "Where were Bai Yunfei and the others captured?" "I'll take you there." Bai Xiaoye was very decisive this time. She nodded and directly ran out of the valley. After a while, under Bai Xiaoye's lead, Nyetian and the others came to a thorny forest. There were low bushes all around and thorns were densely packed, giving off a very eerie feeling. "Little girl, is this the place?" Long Outyen looked around and couldn't see any shadow of the trance. He couldn't help but smile. "The trance you're talking about aren't these low bushes, right?" "No." Bai Xiaoya's face was red with anxiety. She looked around in confusion. There were a lot of trees here just now. How did they disappear? Nie Tian frowned and walked over. He carefully looked around and immediately found many huge footprints. They were similar to human footprints, but they were very big, at least a few meters wide. He followed the footprints and saw that there seemed to be a dark passage in front of him. They're gone. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he said in a deep voice. He guessed that the trance Bai Xiaoya mentioned had already left and were heading towards that dark passage. Big brother, let's go after them. Long Aotian also saw the dark passage and said with a serious face. Nie Tian nodded, took a glance at Bai Xiaoya and said, "Protect her, Aotian." Long Aotian agreed and said to Bai Xiaoya, "Little girl, stay by my side." The three of them didn't delay and followed the footprints. After a while, the three of them entered the dark passage. Nie Tian looked around and found that the passage was very deep and hundreds of meters high. There were black boulders all around, which were obviously man-made. The three of them ran along the passage and came out of it after a while. Where is it? Nie Tian's vision widened. He immediately saw that in the dense forest in front of him, there were dozens of huge figures slowly moving forward. They really are trance. Nie Tian's eyes suddenly trembled when he saw those figures clearly. They really were trees. Although the huge figures looked like humans, their bodies were trees. Their hands and feet were huge branches, and their bodies were about 100 meters long. On the Trent's body, there were many human martial artists lying in disorder. Nie Tian recognized them from afar. They were Bai Yunfei and the others, even Shui Yong was among them. These trance seemed to have captured all the warriors, but they didn't kill them. It seemed that they wanted to take these warriors to a place. Damn, there really are trance. Long Outyen was stunned at first, then he laughed strangely and looked a little excited. He turned around and said to Bai Xiaoya behind him, "Little girl, stay here and don't move." He didn't expect there to be so many trance. If they fought later, he definitely wouldn't be able to take care of Bai Xiaoya. Nie Tian and Long Outyen looked at each other and nodded. They moved at the same time and directly chased after them. Boom! At this moment, a huge figure descended from the sky like a mountain. It crashed onto the ground, causing the earth to tremble violently. All the trees within a radius of several thousand meters were destroyed, and a wave of soil tens of meters tall rose from the ground. Nie Tian and Long Outyen were still in the air, but they suddenly felt a terrifying pressure covering the sky and earth. Both of them were stunned for a moment, then they hurriedly retreated hundreds of meters away and stood in the air. Huh! Nie Tian stabilized his body, and what appeared in front of him was actually a treant that was more than 300 meters tall. Its whole body was flying in the air, and it looked very ferocious. Nie Tian, you're finally here. Then, a cold voice suddenly sounded, and then a figure appeared and landed on the giant treant. Lin Yi. Nie Tian's eyes trembled violently when he saw the person's face, and he shouted the person's name. It never occurred to Nie Tian that Lin Yi would suddenly appear at this time, and it seemed that he was controlling the trance. Lin Yi and the trance were on the same side, and he was controlling the trance to capture the other warriors. How is this possible? Nie Tian's eyes flickered violently, and he couldn't understand what was going on in front of him. Lin Yi can control these trance? Could it be? At this time, a guess suddenly appeared in Nie Tian's mind, which made his eyes suddenly tremble, and a trace of panic appeared on his face. Chapter 1156. Lin Yi awakened his previous life's memories? Thinking of this conjecture, Nie Tian's expression could not help falling. If it was really like this, then it would be terrible. Nie Tian forced himself to calm down and spread out his divine sense. Detecting that Lin Yi's strength did not increase and was still third-level Heavenly Emperor, he could not help heaving a sigh in relief. But the doubts in his heart grew. If Lin Yi did not awaken his previous life's memories, why could he control the trance? Nie Tian, are you scared? At this time, Lin Yi stood at the highest point of that enormous treant and smiled cold, appearing extremely mocking. He enjoyed Nie Tian's shocked and panicked appearance very much. Nie Tian raised his head and looked at the other party, but he completely calmed down. He immediately discovered that there were soul-devouring mycelium inside these trance bodies too. It's the soul-devouring mycelium controlling the trance. Nie Tian immediately understood that the one controlling the trance was not Lin Yi but someone else. Previously, he had already seen the soul-devouring mycelium controlling several martial artists and almost killing Bai Xiaoye. And now, the trance also had soul-devouring mycelium inside them, indicating that they were controlled by the person behind the soul-devouring mycelium. As long as Lin Yi did not awaken his memories, then there was nothing to be afraid of. It was just that this person who released the soul-devouring mycelium at the back and controlled the trance. Who was it? Why did he want to help Lin Yi? Could it be one of the ancient demon race's 12 demon kings, the soul-devouring demon king? Just as Nie Tian was puzzled, Elder Sword's voice suddenly sounded out, carrying some panic. Soul-devouring demon king? Hearing this name, Nie Tian could not help being stunned, his gaze quivering slightly. He had once heard Elder Sword talk about the 12 ancient demon races. This soul-devouring demon king should be the leader of the 12 demon kings. At this time, Lin Yi's pair of cold eyes flickered as he said sinisterly, Nie Tian, your soul is very good. Your mental strength is strong enough, just nice to use to unseal the soul-devouring demon king. Nie Tian's gaze tightened, immediately understanding everything. That guy controlling the trance at the back was the soul-devouring demon king. But the soul-devouring demon king seemed to be sealed or imprisoned. Lin Yi captured so many martial artists precisely to use their souls to unseal the soul-devouring demon king. How unlucky. It turned out that this world of ice and fire actually imprisoned a demon king from the ancient era. Nie Tian guessed that perhaps this ice and fire array was an imprisonment spiritual array, and its purpose was to imprison the soul-eater demon king. Could it be a coincidence that he encountered an ancient demon king in a random alternate dimension? Lin Yi, you already knew that the soul-eater beast king was imprisoned here, right? Nie Tianling sneered and asked in a deep voice. Nie Tian, you're not that stupid. You can still understand before you die. Lin Yi laughed and said, actually, when I came to the mysterious Yellow Mountain Range, I already knew that there was an alternate space here, and the Soul-Eater Demon King was imprisoned in it. The Gate of the Void was deliberately released by the Soul-Eater Demon King to lure ignorant people like you into the ice and fire formation. Listening to Lin Yi's words, Nie Tian's gaze slowly became complicated. At this time, he had completely understood. At that time, Lin Yi did not attack him because he wanted to use him to enter the Gate of the Void. Since Lin Yi knew that there was a spiritual pool of heaven and earth behind the Gate of the Void, he still set it in front of everyone so that others would follow him in. He needed the souls of these people to unseal the Soul-Eater Demon King. What a deep plan! Nie Tian understood everything, and his eyes could not help but tremble. It turned out that entering the ice and fire formation was already planned by Lin Yi. It seems that you already know that you are the reincarnation of the Blood Demon King? After calming down, Nie Tian's eyes became firm, and he said lightly. Lin Yi's eyes trembled. Obviously, he did not expect that Nie Tian also knew that he was the reincarnation of the Blood Demon King. But he immediately calmed down, laughed wildly, and said loudly, Xue Qiong has told me everything. As long as I can enter the spiritual pool of heaven and earth, I can awaken the memory of my previous life, and my strength will also be restored to its peak. At that time, no one in this world can stop me. Xue Qiong was the ancient blood demon lurking in Lin Yi's body. At this time, Lin Yi already knew his identity, but he had not recovered the memory of his previous life. In fact, when Nie Tian did not kill him in the Zhejiang region and chose to let him go, he already had some doubts at that time. With Nye Tian's decisive character, it was impossible for him to let him go. There must be a reason why he let him go. After that, he asked Xueqiong and found out everything. The reincarnation of the Blood Demon King? Long Aotian was confused, and his head was about to explode. Blood Demon King, don't talk nonsense with this kid. His soul is very powerful. As long as I devour his soul, I can break the seal. Hurry up and do it, I can't wait anymore. At this time, a mass of soul-eater mycelium appeared on Lin Yi's shoulder and condensed into a ghost face. Okay. Lin Yi nodded coldly, and his eyes were full of killing intent. The soul-eater demon king wanted Nye Tian's soul, and he wanted Nye Tian's dragon vein. As long as he merged with the dragon vein in Nye Tian's body and entered the spiritual pool of heaven and earth, his memory of his previous life would be awakened, and his strength would be restored. Nye Tian was slightly nervous. He was not afraid of Lin Yi, but he did not know the strength of these tree men. You! At this time, before Lin Yi made a move, Long Aotian roared, and then his figure moved and directly rushed over. At this time, Long Aotian's strength had been completely restored. He punched with the ghost bone of 8 desolation, and the horrible ghost chi of 8 desolation filled the air, like a stormy sea, condensed into a black fist shadow, and pressed down. Courting death. In the face of Long Aotian's all-out attack, Lin Yi was not afraid at all. He roared, and the tree man under his feet suddenly became arrogant. The huge branches waved, and the tree man grew rapidly. In the air, a withered tree hand appeared, formed into a sharp claw, and grabbed over. Boom! A muffled sound was heard, and the black fist shadow bombarded the withered tree hand. Suddenly, countless branches exploded, and the terrible power spread, wreaking havoc in the space. Long Aotian's strength was very strong. After breaking the withered tree hand, his fist bombarded the tree man, and directly knocked the hundreds of meters tall tree man to the ground. Lin Yi saw that the situation was not good, and he quickly retreated and suddenly shouted, "Heartless, what are you waiting for?" As soon as he finished speaking, a figure flew out and stood in midair. The figure stared coldly at Long Aotian and said in an eerie voice, "Long Aotian, your opponent is me." Heartless. Nye Tian saw that figure and his eyes trembled. He did not expect that Heartless would support Lin Yi. These tree men even captured Zhu Tianhua and the others, and Heartless actually did not care about their lives. When Lin Yi saw that Heartless stopped Long Aotian, his pair of blood-red eyes immediately stared at Nye Tian and said cold, "Nye Tian, it is time for us to end this." Since the last time he lost to Nye Tian, he did not stop thinking about revenge. And the most important thing was that Nye Tian had the royal spiritual dragon vein, which was what he wanted the most. Chapter 1157. Just as Nye Tian was staring at the treant on the ground, the treant actually stood up again, and its body was growing non-stop. The branches around its body were like tentacles, waving towards the sky, looking incomparably ferocious. Nye Tian, these Gu Shuren were originally the guardians of the Hanging Mountain, but now they are being controlled by the Soul-Eater Demon King using the Soul-Eater Mycelium, and have become puppets. Even if I don't make a move, you will die in the hands of Gu Shuren. Lin Yi stood tall in the sky, the corners of his mouth curled up into a strange smile. The Gu Shuren clan was an ancient clan, and the power in their body was equivalent to a rank 9 spiritual beast. They were very powerful, and low-level Heavenly Emperor realm martial artists were no match for them. Is that so? Nye Tianling smiled coldly, but his eyes were flashing with a strange light. He seemed to remember that his power of lightning was extremely effective against the Soul-Eater Mycelium. Even the Soul-Eater Demon King was surprised at this point. Rumble! On the other side, Long Aotian and Heartless had already started fighting. There was a loud sound in the sky, and a terrible power bloomed, directly destroying the surrounding trees within 10,000 meters. Even the ground could not withstand the impact of the huge power, and directly cracked. Nie Tian did not pay attention to the battle between the two. He believed that with Long Outian's strength, he would not be at a disadvantage against Heartless. Roar! At this time, the Trent's body had already grown to a size of 500 meters, and it actually let out a deep roar. A gale of power condensed into a vast and mighty aura, causing the surrounding space to tremble unceasingly. Hua! Great anger surged in Gu Shuren's eyes, and he directly waved a huge hand over. Suddenly, a surging aura erupted, turning into a billowing air wave that pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned, and meteor wings appeared on his back. He did not fight head-on with Gu Shuren, but directly dodged. Gu Shuren's strength was too strong, and his vitality was even more terrifying. Just now, he was knocked down by Long Outian's punch, but he was not injured at all. Instead, he became even more berserk. With Nie Tian's current strength, he was not strong enough to fight against Gu Shuren head-on. However, the latter was strong but not fast enough. Nie Tian had the meteor wings, which was enough to avoid Gu Shuren's frontal attack. In the air, Nie Tian's figure was as agile as lightning. The sword Absolute Heaven Slash appeared in his hand, and he thrust it forward. Endless Thunderbolt sword will surged out and turned into a huge thunderbolt net, covering Gu Shuren. Humph! Seeing this scene, Lin Yi sneered and said with a mocking expression, "You want to kill Gu Shuren with such strength? What a joke!" However, Nie Tian didn't care about him at all. His figure darted through the air like a shooting star, stabbing out with his sword again and again. Countless lightning nets pressed down on Gu Shuren. Bang! 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 Gu Shuren violently waved all the branches on his body, like countless wild snakes dancing in the air, and the lightning net was torn apart. Although the Thunderbolt sword will was strong, it was still too difficult to defeat Gu Shuren. However, Nie Tian didn't want to kill Gu Shuren at all. He wanted to use the Thunderbolt sword will to disperse the soul-devouring mycelium in Gu Shuren's body and restore Gu Shuren's original consciousness. Lin Yi just said that Gu Shuren was the guardian of Floating Mountain. Therefore, Nie Tian guessed that these Gu Shuren should have been left behind by the people who constructed the Ice and Fire Grand Array to watch over the soul-devouring Demon King. It was just that the soul-devouring Demon King that was sealed recovered some strength after hundreds of thousands of years and controlled Gu Shuren. Chi. Although the lightning net was shattered by Gu Shuren, the Thunderbolt sword will was like bone maggots, pouring into Gu Shuren's body uncontrollably. That soul-devouring ghost face on Lin Yi's shoulder suddenly realized something and cried out nervously, "Blood Demon King, this brat's strength is very strange, able to restrain my soul-devouring mycelium. Quickly make a move and kill him." Lin Yi froze for a moment and immediately understood, immediately flying into a violent rage. The strange blood-colored pupils quivered slightly. A surge of blood-colored power gushed out and turned into blood-colored sharp blades, assaulting over towards Nie Tian. This was the power of the Eye of Blood Demon. It was very horrifying, sufficient to insta-kill a 5th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist. Swoosh! A sound of tearing through the air echoed out. The blood-colored sharp blades whistled ear-piercingly, their speed extremely fast. Unfortunately, the blood-colored sharp blades were fast, but Nie Tian's reaction and speed were even faster. His figure was akin to a meteor, directly flickering and vanishing from where he was. Missed! Lin Yi's move missed. His gaze trembled, a look of surprise on his face. Not only was the power of his Eye of Blood Demon tremendous, but the most terrifying thing was that its speed was swift to the extreme, virtually instantaneous. Under such a close distance, Nie Tian actually only relied on speed to evade. This was too bizarre. Nie Tian's figure stabilized, the corners of his mouth curling up into a smile, but he looked at that Gu Shuren. He could clearly see that inside Gu Shuren's body, the Thunderbolt sword will was currently tearing the soul-devouring mycelium apart. Gu Shuren was enduring tremendous pain, as if he had gone mad, roaring savagely. The surrounding trees and rocks all crumbled. Previously, when Nye Tian fought with the warriors controlled by the soul-devouring mycelium, when the soul-devouring mycelium left the warrior's body, it directly tore the warrior's body apart. However, he believed that with Gu Shuren's vitality, even if the soul-devouring mycelium left his body, he would not die. Damn it! Lin Yi suddenly understood that Nye Tian wanted to let Gu Shuren recover his original consciousness. With a low roar, an ominous glint flashed in his eyes. Nye Tian, I want to see how strong you have become after coming to the Heaven Realm. Lin Yi had come to the Heaven Realm a long time before Nye Tian. He believed that with his current strength, he could definitely kill Nye Tian. A blood-colored vortex appeared above Lin Yi's palm, and a bloody and violent aura immediately spread out, covering the surrounding space of thousands of meters with a layer of dazzling red. Is it the blood demon Lotus again? Nye Tian looked at that blood-colored vortex, the corners of his mouth twitching a little, his eyes firm as usual. Lin Yi sneered. His eyes flashed with a murderous intent. He threw out a palm and a blood-colored vortex roared out. It suddenly became violent in the air. The terrifying bloodline power bloomed, instantly increasing by tens of thousands of times. The blood-colored petals bloomed like crimson flames, looking magnificent and magnificent. However, the most violent and violent killing intent was hidden within this gorgeous scene. Lin Yi's strength reached the third-level Heavenly Emperor, far stronger than before. The blood demon Lotus aura was also more violent, spreading out for tens of thousands of meters. Martial artists below the Heavenly Emperor realm could not even withstand the pressure from this aura. Boom! The blood demon Lotus suddenly pressed over, like a blood-colored mountain. The surging aura was like a violent blood wave, bloody and violent. Proud Sky 3 Absolutes, Absolute Sword Intent. Nye Tian looked at the surging killing intent, the corners of his mouth twitched a little, and directly stabbed out with his sword. Immediately, sword intent gushed out wildly. A terrifying sword image appeared, the aura traversing through heaven and earth, as if it was going to break the void. Boom, ka. In the next instant, the blood demon Lotus collided with the vast sword image. A terrifying aura suddenly erupted, incomparably violent power wreaked havoc, emitting a violent explosion in the void. Chapter 1158. Chi 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 bang? In the void an ear-piercing sound resounded. The huge blood demon Lotus could not withstand the impact of the sword intent and was forcefully torn apart. In the end, it collapsed with a loud bang. Blood-colored energy surged in the space, adding a sinister aura to the air. How is this possible? Lin Yi's eyes trembled violently when he saw this. His eyes were filled with great fear. However, his reaction was extremely fast. A scarlet dragon chi appeared behind him, and he punched out. A majestic dragon silhouette surged out and blocked the sword that was coming at him. Although Lin Yi managed to block the fatal sword strike in a hurry, his figure was sent flying backward by the impact, and he was forced to retreat several hundred meters. How can your sword essence be so horrible? Lin Yi steadied himself and exclaimed in disbelief. He was also a swordsman. He knew that Nye Tian's sword principle was only at the primary level of profound meaning of sword, while he was at the peak of sword soul. However, the sword strike Nye Tian had unleashed just now was so powerful that it had shattered his blood demon Lotus and nearly caused him serious injuries. Lin Yi didn't feel that Nye Tian's sword principle strength was so horrible when he fought in the Zhejiang region. How could his sword principle strength make a qualitative leap in just a few months? Of course, he didn't know that Nye Tian had condensed the fourth sword essence, the soul-devouring sword essence, in addition to the improvement of sword principle. The soul-devouring sword essence was a kind of sword essence of soul. It not only made the four sword essences more perfect, but also had the effect of spiritual attack. If Lin Yi didn't have the eyes of Blood Demon, he would have been a dead body. Lin Yi, do you think you are the only one who is becoming stronger? Nie Tian replied cold with a faint smile. Just now, he used the second move of the 3 skills of Proud Sword Skill, Absolute Understanding of Sword Essence. With the help of the 4 sword essences, it was not surprising that he had such power. You! Lin Yi's pupils suddenly shrank, and his face showed a ferocious expression. When he was in the Jilong region, he could still fight with Nie Tian. Although he lost in the end, he thought that it was Nie Tian's luck. He came to the heaven realm before Nie Tian in order to increase his strength faster. But now that his capability had improved and his eyes of blood demon were stronger, he could not even take one attack from Nie Tian. He was unable to accept such a strong contrast. Nie Tian, I don't believe you're that strong. Suddenly Lin Yi seemed to have gone crazy. A black feather appeared in his hand, and he directly slashed out with his sword. Immediately, a roaring sound came from the sky, and the surging sword essence rolled out like dark clouds. A black sword shadow appeared, and the atmosphere was silent and destructive, as if it was going to collapse everything. Nie Tian frowned slightly. Immediately after, the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. His sword Absolute Heaven Slash pierced forward. The brilliance of the sword blossomed in the sky as a terrifying power erupted in an instant. Boom! In the air, the 2 sword shadows collided with each other, like 2 primitive beasts. Suddenly, the violent sword essence exploded and shot out in all directions like a sky full of sharp blades. Lin Yi's level of swordsmanship was lower than Nie Tian's, and his sword essence was more than 1 level lower than Nie Tian's. Choosing to compete with Nie Tian in swordsmanship was absolutely the stupidest thing to do. Crack! Bang! Almost at the moment when the 2 swords collided, a tearing sound was heard, and the black sword shadow was directly cracked and collapsed. Ah! With a shrill scream, Lin Yi's figure flew backward. His clothes were torn by the sword essence, and his skin began to crack inch by inch. Blood gushed out and he was covered in blood. Overconfident, Nie Tianling looked at the bloody figure in the sky coldly and said in a deep voice. If Lin Yi had used the dragon vein, he might have been able to hold on, but he chose to use a sword, which was simply asking to be humiliated. Lin Yi's figure stagnated in the air, and then he stood firm. His body was badly mutilated, and he looked extremely embarrassed. In fact, it was a great opportunity for Nie Tian to kill Lin Yi. As long as he used the taboo move, it was enough to destroy Lin Yi's body. However, Lin Yi was the reincarnation of a blood demon king. Even if his martial body was destroyed, he would not be killed. Instead, the power of the blood demon in his body would be released. Even if the blood demon could not survive for a long time without a physical body, it would be enough for the Blood Demon King to kill everyone. Nie Tian did not dare to take the risk, so he did not choose to kill Lin Yi. At this time, although Lin Yi seemed to be seriously injured, his foundation was not hurt. Only his skin was torn, which was a very small injury for a Heavenly Emperor Realm warrior. Ah! Lin Yi roared, and his body shook. The blood on his body shook, and the torn skin healed instantly, but his face was slightly pale. Nie Tian, if I don't kill you, I am not Lin Yi. Lin Yi was completely crazy, and his whole face was distorted. Blood Demon King. At this time, the Soul Eater Demon King's voice suddenly sounded, with great panic. The Soul Eater Demon King looked at the huge Gu Shuren. Nie Tian also noticed something at this moment. He suddenly turned around and saw Gu Shuren suddenly stood up, but he looked very calm. A pair of black hole-like eyes stared at Lin Yi and the Soul Eater Demon King. He has regained consciousness. Nie Tian used his divine sense to sense Gu Shuren's body, and there were no more Soul Eater mycelium. Obviously, Gu Shuren had regained consciousness. Soul Eater Demon King, what have you done? Gu Shuren seemed to remember everything and suddenly roared. His huge body shook, and the branches all over his body danced wildly, looking extremely violent. Not good, he has regained consciousness. The Soul Eater Demon King sensed something was wrong and exclaimed, "Blood Demon King, let's leave." Linny frowned and looked at Nye Tian unwillingly. Finally, he decided to leave and said in a deep voice, "Blood Poverty." "Master, I'm ready." Shui Poverty's voice sounded, and then a black vortex suddenly appeared beside Lin Yi. It was a space-time door. Lin Yi's figure moved, and he directly drilled into the vortex, disappearing. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't expect Lin Yi to leave in this way. Leave. On the other side, Zhu Qing saw that Lin Yi had left, and he didn't dare to fight anymore. His figure flashed, and he left directly. Want to escape? Long Outyen didn't want to let Zhu Qing leave. He roared and wanted to chase after him. "Outyen, don't worry about him. Saving people is more important." At this time, Nye Tian's voice sounded, and he stopped Long Outyen from chasing after Zhu Qing. The other warriors were still in the hands of the tree men, and they had to be rescued immediately. Long Outyen's figure stopped, and he looked at the huge tree man strangely, as if he still wanted to attack. "He has already regained his original consciousness," Nye Tian said faintly, and then looked at the huge tree man and said, "Your companions have captured many warriors, and the Soul Eater Demon King wants to use the souls of these warriors to break the seal." The pitch-black eyes of the tree man glanced at Nye Tian, and they were extremely cold, with great anger, as if they regarded Nye Tian as an enemy. Chapter 1159. Roar! The giant treant stood still and let out a deep roar. It sounded like a distant horn, and a powerful force spread out in all directions, covering the entire floating mountain. What a powerful force! Long Outyen was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but exclaim. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He immediately felt that his senses were no longer suppressed and had returned to normal. The feeling of his senses returning was very good. Everything within a radius of tens of thousands of meters became very clear. In the holographic projection, Nye Tian noticed that the treants in the distance suddenly stopped. The soul-devouring mycelium in their bodies was expelled in an instant. Nye Tian looked at the treant in front of him and thought, his roar just now must have awakened the consciousness of the other treants. At the same time, it also removed a certain restriction on the floating mountain. That's why my senses have recovered. Nye Tian. At this time, Bai Xiaoye ran over with a panicked look in her eyes. She was clearly worried about Bai Yunfei and the others. "Follow me," the giant treant said in a deep voice and immediately started running. It was very fast and caused a lot of movement, causing the ground to tremble violently. Nye Tian and the others hurried to catch up with it. They were surprised that the giant treant could run so fast. In the distance, after the treants regained consciousness, they stopped moving and looked at the many human cultivators lying on their bodies. They all looked surprised, as if they didn't know what had happened. "Lord Leader." At this time, the giant treant arrived. When the other treants saw him, they all knelt down and greeted him respectfully. At this time, Nye Tian and the others also arrived. They couldn't help but be surprised when they saw this scene. So this giant treant was the leader of the Gu Shuren clan. "Big brother, second brother." Bai Xiaoye saw Bai Yunfei and Bai Xiaofei and cried out in surprise. She immediately ran to them. "Put these humans down," the treant leader said in a deep voice, full of dignity. "Yes." The treants answered and slowly put all the human cultivators on the ground. Nye Tian walked over to take a look. These cultivators did not have any soul-devouring mycelium in their bodies. They had only fainted. If nothing unexpected happened, they would wake up soon. "Human, why are you guys here?" The treant chief stared coldly at Nye Tian, exuding a faint pressure. He was extremely angry. This was the Ice and Fire Grand Array, and the floating mountain was the place where the ancient Soul Eater Demon King was imprisoned. Humans should not appear here. You're the protectors of the Hanging Mountain? Nye Tian didn't answer the Treant chief's question. The leader of the Treant tribe was stunned for a moment. He did not expect that Nye Tian would actually avoid his question. However, he still nodded his head and said, "The Ice and Fire Formation was constructed by Lord Taijian to imprison the Soul Eater Demon King. He left us, the Gu Shuren clan, in the Ice and Fire Grand Array to guard the Hanging Mountain and keep an eye on the Soul Eater Demon King." Lord Iron Sword? Upon hearing this name, Nye Tian was slightly stunned. He said, "Are you talking about the Iron Sword Demon King by the mystic dragon demon sage's side? How did you know?" The Treant chief was stunned. Obviously, he did not expect that Nye Tian would actually know about the Iron Sword Demon King. Nye Tian was even more astonished. He had never imagined that the Iron Sword Demon King would have such a heaven-defying method to create an alternate space. Previously, he had fought with the remnant soul of the Iron Sword Demon King and did not feel that the latter was very powerful. Perhaps the Iron Sword Demon King was a spiritual array master and was not good at fighting. Moreover, when he met Nye Tian, he was only left with a remnant soul and was extremely weak. Nye Tian nodded his head and then told the story of how everyone came to the Ice and Fire Grand Array. That young man is actually the reincarnation of the Blood Demon King. The Treant chief was extremely shocked after hearing Nye Tian's story. The Blood Demon King was the strongest among the 12 ancient demon clans. After hundreds of thousands of years of reincarnation, he actually came to the Ice and Fire Grand Array and came to the Floating Mountain. In that case, everything was the scheme of the Blood Demon King and the Soul Eater Demon King. The Treant chief's huge body trembled slightly. It was obvious that he was very angry. Nye Tian looked at the Treant chief and waited for the latter to calm down a little before he said, "According to Lin Yi, the Soul Eater Demon King seems to be about to break the seal. I wonder how strong the Soul Eater Demon King will be after breaking the seal?" Break the seal. The Soul Eater Demon King's body swayed and his huge eyes suddenly trembled. His body actually stiffened for a moment and it took him a long time to react. "Isn't it just an ancient demon king? Is it that terrifying?" Long Outyin glanced at the Treant chief with a face full of arrogance. In his opinion, how terrifying could an ancient demon king who had been struggling at death's door for hundreds of thousands of years be? After a moment, the Treant chief finally calmed down. His deep voice was a little hoarse and trembling at the same time. He said, "It has been hundreds of thousands of years. The seal must have weakened. When the Soul Eater Demon King was sleeping, he released the Soul Eater Mycelium to control us. The Soul Eater Demon King's demonic power is boundless. Once he breaks the seal, the Floating Mountain will no longer be able to trap him. Instead, the entire Ice and Fire Grand Array will collapse. The terrifying power will be enough to destroy a part of the world." The Treant chief was very agitated. As he spoke, his body trembled. "So serious?" Long Outyin frowned. He suddenly thought of the Ice Dragon and Fire Phoenix from before. That kind of power was indeed something he could not contend against. If the Ice and Fire Grand Array collapsed, not only would the entire Heaven Realm be destroyed, the East River Celestial Territory would also be razed to the ground. The Ice and Fire Grand Array was condensed by the divine power. This was a power that the martial artists of the Heaven Realm could not imagine. "Sir Patriarch, don't be anxious." Nye Tian was very calm at this moment. He said, "If the Soul Eater Demon King wants to break the seal, it needs to absorb the soul force of the martial artists. Now that these martial artists are here, the Soul Eater Demon King should not be able to break the seal in a short period of time." The Treant chief's face stiffened. He suddenly turned around and released a branch. It was like a palm that supported a martial artist. His eyes were slightly closed, as if he was sensing something. Nye Tian watched from the side. He did not know what the Treant chief was doing. Just now, he had already checked and these martial artists did not have any problems. They were just temporarily unconscious. Oh no. At this moment, the Treant chief's pitch-black eyes suddenly opened. His face was filled with fear. He said, "The Soul Eater Demon King planted a Soul Eater curse on these martial artists." Soul Eater curse? Nyetian frowned. He extended his divine sense and activated the holographic divine patterns. He carefully sensed all the martial artists who had fainted, but did not find anything abnormal. His perception was very strong. The holographic divine patterns could sense very weak powers. If these people had a Soul Eater curse on them, he should be able to sense it. Cough, cough. Just as Nyetian was puzzled, a few dry coughs sounded. Nyetian looked over. It was actually Bai Xiaofei who had woken up. Chapter 1160. Second brother. Bai Xiaofei suddenly woke up. Bai Xiaoye cried out in surprise, so surprised that tears almost came out of her eyes. "Little sister, where am I?" Bai Xiaofei's expression was sluggish, a puzzled look on his face. Clearly, he had yet to react. The Treant Patriarch, on the other hand, was quite surprised at this time. He looked at Bai Xiaofei in puzzlement, but then he noticed something and said in astonishment, "His primordial spirit is so terrifying, it can actually break the soul-devouring curse seal by itself." Primordial spirit? Nyetian was stunned for a moment. He wanted to sense Bai Xiaofei's primordial spirit, but he discovered that he could not sense any aura. The latter's primordial spirit was like a cold pool, bottomless. With Nyetian's current perception ability, the primordial spirit of an ordinary martial artist could not be hidden in front of him. Bai Xiaofei's primordial spirit was indeed strange. It could actually ignore his perception. Seeing that Bai Xiaofei's consciousness was still groggy, Nyetian asked the Treant Patriarch, "Lord Patriarch, are you sure that these people have been implanted with the soul-devouring curse seal?" The Treant Patriarch nodded solemnly, then released a green primordial spirit that surged into a martial artist's body. However, when the primordial spirit escaped, it turned into a dirty black color. What's going on? Nyetian saw this scene and could not help but be stunned. He was quite surprised in his heart. Argu Shuren clan's primordial spirit contains enormous vitality, but when it encounters the soul-devouring curse seal, it will be instantly devoured. The power of darkness circulating in his body is indeed the soul-devouring curse seal. The Treant Patriarch's expression was solemn, and his voice seemed even lower. Nyetian realized at this time that these martial artists might really have been implanted with the soul-devouring curse seal. Little Yong. Long Outyen also believed at this time. He howled, found Shui Yong, and actually burst into tears. Nyetian frowned and was somewhat speechless. Long Outyen's mood changes too quickly. Shui Yong was only hit by the soul-devouring curse. It wasn't said that he would definitely die. Lord Patriarch, what will happen to the people who were hit by the soul-devouring curse seal? Nyetian temporarily ignored Long Outyen and asked with a frown. Seeing the Treant Patriarch's panicked reaction, it seemed that something terrible would happen after being hit by the soul-devouring curse. The Treant Patriarch's expression became even more solemn, and he said, "The soul-devouring demon king can use the curse to absorb soul energy from the martial artists who have been hit by the soul-devouring curse seal until all of their soul energy has been sucked dry." So domineering! Nyetian's eyes darkened. If these martial artists' soul force was sucked dry, they would become complete idiots, no different from plants. However, this was not the most frightening thing. The most important thing was that once the soul-devouring beast king absorbed enough soul energy, it would be able to break the seal and recover its strength. That would be truly terrible. Lord Patriarch, do you have a way to remove the soul-devouring curse seal? Nyetian looked at the Treant Patriarch and asked cautiously. Just now, the Treant Patriarch was able to expel the soul-devouring mycelium from the other Treants, so he should be able to remove the soul-devouring curse seal as well. Just now, I only awakened the tribesman's original consciousness. It was the life force in their bodies that expelled the soul-devouring mycelium. You humans have too weak life force, so you can't remove the soul-devouring curse seal at all. The Treant Patriarch spoke solemnly, but his eyes released a murderous light at this time, and he said in a cold voice, "If you want to stop the soul-devouring Demon King from breaking the seal, you must kill these people." Nye Tian sensed the Treant Patriarch's killing intent, and his face sank. This old Treant was truly vicious. If he couldn't remove the soul-devouring curse seal, he wanted to kill everyone. If these martial artists were killed, the soul energy in their bodies would naturally dissipate, and they would not be absorbed by the soul-devouring Demon King. However, they were living people. Even if some of them were people that Nye Tian disliked, they were still living beings after all, and they were of the same kind. How could he just watch them be killed like this? No. Long Aotian also heard the Treant Patriarch's words and roared in a deep voice, "Who dares to touch my disciple, I'll fight him to the death. These people can't be killed." Nye Tian's face also sank as he said resolutely, "Roar." At this moment, the other Treants stood up one after another and roared in unison. A wild aura burst out, and billowing waves of air covered the sky and earth. "Stop!" The Treant Patriarch's face was incomparably gloomy as he roared. The other Treants immediately calmed down and dispersed their aura. Although Nye Tian and the others were intruders in the world of ice and fire, it was Nye Tian who helped the Treant Patriarch regain his consciousness. Otherwise, the soul-devouring Demon King could slowly absorb Gu Shuren's soul energy, and one day it would also be able to break the seal, just not so quickly. "Lord Patriarch, there must be other ways to stop the soul-devouring Demon King from breaking the seal." Nye Tian took a step forward, pointed at Bai Xiaofei and said, "Since he can break the soul-devouring curse seal, others can too. My primordial spirit is the Thousand Dusk Divine Seal." Bai Xiaofei had already calmed down and recovered a lot. He stood up and said, "Thousand Dusk Divine Seal?" Nye Tian was stunned for a moment, then he thought of something and his eyes suddenly froze. Thousand Dusk Divine Seal. Long Aotian also reacted at this moment and cried out in surprise. No wonder you can break the soul-devouring curse seal by yourself." The Treant Patriarch was shocked, and his face was full of shock. After a long while, Nye Tian's expression eased slightly. He finally understood why he couldn't sense Bai Xiaofei's primordial spirit. It turned out that the latter's primordial spirit was actually the Thousand Dusk Divine Seal. The Thousand Dusk Divine Seal was one of the 10 strongest seals, even more terrifying than Jean de Bao's 3,000 seals. It was ranked 6th among the 10 seals, and was known as the 6th seal. Jean de Bao's 3,000 seals was the 9th seal, ranked behind the Thousand Dusk Divine Seal. With such a powerful seal in his body, of course he could break the soul-devouring curse seal. Previously, Bai Xiaofei could sense Lin Yi's hidden dragon royal bloodline precisely because he had the Thousand Dusk Divine Seal. The Thousand Dusk Divine Seal allowed him to have senses far beyond ordinary people, even more terrifying than Nye Tian's current holographic Divine Sigil. Nye Tian's holographic Divine Sigil couldn't sense the hidden dragon royal bloodline, but this was because Nye Tian hadn't fully comprehended the power of the holographic Divine Sigil. The holographic Divine Sigil was a powerful Divine Sigil that could sense everything in the world. Unfortunately, the current Nye Tian was too weak, far from reaching that level. Bai Xiaofei, with your current strength, can you break the soul-devouring curse seal on others? Nye Tian became cold and asked with sparkling eyes. Since Bai Xiaofei could break his soul-devouring curse seal, he should be able to break the soul-devouring curse seal on others. Yes. Bai Xiaofei regained his calmness, nodded slightly, and said, "But I need time, at least a few hours to break a soul-devouring curse seal." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed, glancing at the thousands of martial practitioners on the ground. His face couldn't help but stiffen. Bai Xiaofei would need at least a few months to break everyone's soul-devouring curse seal. The soul-devouring demon king obviously wouldn't give him such a long time. Lord Patriarch, in your estimation, how long will it take for the soul-devouring demon king to absorb so much soul energy? Nie Tian looked at the Treant Patriarch and asked carefully. At least 3 days, at most 5 days, the Treant Patriarch replied solemnly. 3 to 5 days. Nie Tian gasped. This time difference was too big. The soul-devouring demon king could absorb everyone's soul energy in 3 to 5 days, which meant that he could break the seal and recover his strength in 3 to 5 days. Thinking of this, Nie Tian's forehead immediately broke out in sweat, feeling a great sense of urgency. Chapter 1161. Nie Tian looked slightly nervous. 3 to 5 days was too short, and he was caught unprepared. The Soul-Eater Demonic King was an ancient peak expert who was on par with the Blood Demonic King. His strength was definitely at the divine realm. Once he broke the seal and regained his strength, not only would it be a disaster for the ice and fire world, it would also be a disaster for the heaven realm. Big brother, are you okay? When Long Outyin saw Nie Tian's nervous expression, he couldn't help but ask. That ancient demon monarch has lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if he broke the seal, he would be an old man on his last breath. Is it really that terrifying? Nie Tian became cold and didn't explain much. In the next 3 days, he had to find the hiding place of the Soul-Eater Demon King and eliminate him. The lightning divine patterns in his body had a strong suppressive effect on the soul-devouring mycelium of the soul-devouring Demon King. As long as he could find the soul-devouring Demon King, he would have a chance to completely eliminate it. Thinking of this, Nie Tian's furrowed brows relaxed a lot. But here came the problem. Where was the Soul-Eater Demon King hiding? The floating mountain didn't look big, but the space within was surprisingly large. It wouldn't be easy to find the Soul-Eater Demon King and the others. Tribe Leader, do you know where the Soul-Eater Demon King and the Blood Demon King have escaped to? Nie Tian looked at the Tree Tribe Leader, hoping that the latter could bring him joy. I don't know. The Treant Patriarch shook his head and said, the Soul-Eater Demon King is imprisoned in a certain seal in the floating mountain. This was done by Lord Iron Sword himself, and no one else knows about it. Not even we, the guardians of the Hanging Mountain, know where the seal is. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown. This matter was a little troublesome. In 3 days' time, he could not even find the Soul-Eater Demon King in the vast floating mountain. Tribe Leader, let us kill these ignorant humans. If they hadn't barged into the world of ice and fire, the Soul-Eater Demon King wouldn't have been able to break the seal. Since they dared to barge in, they deserved to die. Suddenly, a Treant roared, his face filled with rage. Kill them! Kill them! The other Treants followed and roared. Immediately, a murderous aura filled the air. If he could not find the Soul-Eater Demon King, the only way was to kill everyone. Nie Tian saw that Gu Shuren and the others were enraged and couldn't help but feel nervous. He secretly looked at Long Outyin. No matter what, he would not watch these martial artists die. If the Treants really wanted to kill him, he could only fight. Enough! Unexpectedly, the leader of the Treant tribe bellowed. The Treants were stunned. They looked at the Treant tribe leader and prostrated themselves. They didn't dare to make a sound and behaved very respectfully. The Gu Shuren clan was somewhat similar to a pack of wolves. The clan leader was the Wolf King, possessing supreme authority in the clan. No one could provoke him. The Treant tribe leader's expression was grave and stern. His entire body was emitting a terrifying aura. He stared coldly at Nie Tian and said in a deep voice, Human, I'll give you 2 days. If you can't find the Soul-Eater Demon King within 2 days, I'll have to kill these people. 2 days. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, but he could only nod. The Soul-Eater Demon King could absorb everyone's soul within 3 days. The Treant tribe leader giving him 2 days was already very lenient. protect the floating mountain and supervise the Soul Eater Demon King. This is the mission that Sir Iron Sword has entrusted to our Gu Shuren clan. We must carry it out. The Treant tribe leader spoke again. His eyes revealed a sense of holiness. It seemed that in his eyes, the Iron Sword Demon King was an incomparably supreme existence. 2 days it is. Nye Tian nodded. These Gu Shuren's battle strength wasn't strong, but their vitality was very strong. Even with Long Outyen's strength, it would be very difficult to kill a Gu Shuren. Most importantly, Nye Tian didn't want to have a conflict with the Gu Shuren clan. 2 days was a short time, but he had to give it a try. Nye Tian, perhaps I can help you find the Soul Eater Demon King's location. At this time, Bai Xiaofei suddenly walked over and said with a solemn expression. He knew that if it weren't for Nye Tian, they would have died long ago. Even if they hadn't died at the hands of the Soul Eater Demon King, they would have died at the hands of the Treants. I can sense the Soul Eater Demon King's hiding place through the aura of the Soul Eater Demon King. Bai Xiaofei said. Suddenly, a dark aura surged out of his body. It was the same aura that the Treant tribe leader had released from the other martial artists. It was the Soul Eater Demon King. Your 1,000 Sunset Divine Seal has swallowed the Soul Eater Demon King. Nye Tian immediately understood, and his face was filled with shock. It turned out that Bai Xiaofei hadn't simply broken the Soul Eater Demon King. Instead, he had used the 1,000 Sunset Divine Seal to swallow the Soul Eater Demon King. The 1,000 Sunset Divine Seal was indeed terrifying. As expected of the 6th seal, it could even swallow the Soul Eater Demon King. Perhaps the Soul Eater Demon King had not recovered his strength, so the Soul Eater Demon King wasn't strong enough. That was why the 1,000 Sunset Divine Seal had swallowed it. Alright, let's go now. Without further ado, Nye Tian wanted to find the Soul Eater Demon King immediately. He didn't have much time left, and it was very urgent. I want to go too. Bai Xiaoye stepped forward and wanted to follow along. Little sister, stay here and take care of big brother, Bai Xiaofei said calmly. However, there was an undeniable determination in his voice. This wasn't the time to throw a tantrum. Bai Xiaoye would only be a burden if she followed. Bai Xiaoye was stunned for a moment, but she finally nodded and prepared to stay. Bai Xiaofei, don't worry. We will definitely kill the Soul Eater Demon King. Nye Tian looked at Bai Xiaofei with a determined gaze and guaranteed. Nye Tian could already tell that Bai Xiaofei was a very smart and calm person. He could have broken Bai Yunfei's Soul Eater Demon King first, but he didn't do so. Doing so would waste a few hours. Even if Bai Yunfei woke up, once the Soul Eater Demon King broke the seal, everyone would die. Rather than wasting a few hours, it was better to find the Soul Eater Demon King first. To be able to make such a decision under such circumstances, Bai Xiaofei's mental fortitude was far beyond that of an ordinary person's. Yes. Bai Xiaofei nodded slightly. His eyes were so calm that it made people's hearts palpitate. Leader, please take care of these people. Nye Tian turned around and said to the Treant leader. The Treant chieftain answered. Immediately after, a ball of green liquid flowed out of his body and passed it to Nye Tian. He said, "This is my tree spirit liquid. Take it with you. Once you find the Soul Eater King, send me a message immediately." Okay. Nye Tian took the tree spirit liquid and poured it into his palm. Without further delay, he left with Long Outyen and Bai Xiaofei. Human, remember, you only have 2 days. The Treant leader looked at the backs of Nye Tian and the other two and reminded him. I know. Nye Tian replied. His figure instantly disappeared into the dense forest. 2 days. Once the time was up, the Treant leader would mercilessly kill everyone. This was like a sharp blade hanging over Nye Tian's heart. It could fall at any time. Chapter 1162. In the dense forest of Floating Mountain, 3 figures were shuttling like the wind. They were Nye Tian, Long Outyen, and Bai Xiaofei. Little Bai, we have been running for hours. Are you sure you are going in the right direction? Long Outyen was worried about Shuiyong's safety. He was getting impatient. I am sure. There was a black rune floating in front of Bai Xiaofei. It was this rune that was guiding him forward. Outyen, don't disturb him, Nie Tian said lightly. He trusted Bai Xiaofei. Or rather, he trusted the Qian Shi divine seal in Bai Xiaofei's body. Long Outyen's face stiffened. He didn't say anything. Then, the three of them ran for hours again. Nie Tian realized that Floating Mountain was much bigger than he had imagined. In just half a day, the three of them had traveled thousands of miles. However, they were still wandering in the forest. I say, Little Bai, we are running like headless flies. Can we find the Soul-Eater Beast King? Long Outyen lost his patience. He said coldly. Soon. Bai Xiaofei frowned. He paused in the air and looked at a valley in the distance. It should be there. Nie Tian's eyes flashed. He felt it too. Although he couldn't feel the aura of the Soul-Eater curse, the spiritual energy in the surroundings was much denser. The three of them didn't hesitate. Long Outyen took the lead. His body flashed and he entered the valley. After entering the valley, Nie Tian and the others were stunned. It was a closed valley. There was only a narrow entrance. The other three sides were cliff. When they looked up, it seemed like they were in a huge pit. Long Outyen was stunned. He wanted to say something, but Nie Tian stopped him. At this time, he needed to calm down and give Bai Xiaofei enough time. Although this was a sealed canyon, Nie Tian believed that there must be other mysteries. This canyon was very strange. There was not a single piece of gravel in the valley, and the surrounding cliffs were all straight up and down. They were very smooth, as if they had been carved by man. Bai Xiaofei looked around, and the mass of black symbols in front of him suddenly surged. It became violent, and like a tadpole, it swam towards one of the cliffs of the canyon. The black runes slowly slithered on the cliff, like a black snake crawling on the cliff. After a while, a strange scene appeared. A huge circular pattern suddenly appeared on the originally empty cliff. It looked like a strange flower. Boom! In the next moment, the cliff under the flower pattern suddenly caved in, and the entire canyon shook violently. What's going on? Long Outyen let out a strange cry and immediately became nervous. However, Bai Xiaofei's reaction was very calm. He stood in place and calmly looked at the swaying cliffs around him. This is a huge formation built by huge rocks. Nie Tian reacted immediately, and his eyes flickered with excitement. It seemed that they had found the location of the Soul-Eater Demon King. Boom, boom, boom. The surrounding cliffs suddenly moved, and actually split into pieces of huge rock. They moved between each other, and in the blink of an eye, a deep tunnel appeared. This! Nie Tian gasped. It turned out that the canyon was just a cover, and this was actually a tunnel. Such a deep tunnel! Long Outyen looked at the tunnel in front of him. It was actually so deep that he couldn't see the end of it. Nie Tian looked at the tunnel and spread out his divine sense. He seemed to vaguely see a huge palace appearing behind him. Let's go in. Bai Xiaofei's forehead was full of sweat, and he nodded slightly. The three of them stepped into the tunnel, and immediately felt a huge pressure coming towards them. Fortunately, the three of them were Heavenly Emperor Realm martial artists, and they could withstand this pressure. But in the next moment, a terrifying spiritual deterrence came out, directly descending on the three of them. In an instant, Nie Tian seemed to feel that there were countless miserable scenes appearing around him. Many people were suffering great torture, and there were also dark and shrill screams ringing in his ears, making people feel a great sense of despair. It's a spiritual attack. Nie Tian's reaction was extremely fast, and he instantly understood. The holographic divine rune operated, and directly swept away the spiritual deterrence. Ah! At this time, Bai Xiaofei suddenly screamed, as if he saw the most terrifying scene. His eyes were dilated and his face was hideous. It was very frightening. I will kill you! And Long Outyen also went crazy in an instant. He suddenly roared, and a dragon-slaying slash appeared in his hand. He directly slashed out, blasting towards the void in front of him. Absolute tremor, open! When Nye Tian saw the reaction of the two, he directly activated absolute tremor, and released a terrifying spiritual deterrence from his eyes, directly dissolving the spiritual attack in the two's body. Long Outyen and Bai Xiaofei's eyes glazed, and their whole body almost collapsed, paralyzed on the ground. Phew! Nye Tian let out a long turbid breath, and his face relaxed a lot. Fortunately, he acted in time, or the two's divine senses would have collapsed. What a strange kid! He can even break this king's soul-devouring attack. In the next moment, a dark and low voice sounded. It was the soul-devouring demon king. Brat, you want to stop this king from breaking the seal? This is absolutely impossible. As long as this king breaks the seal, the first person I kill will be you. The faint voice gradually became weak and quickly disappeared. Nye Tian frowned very tightly. It seemed that they had found the right place. This was where the soul-devouring demon king was. However, the soul-devouring demon king already knew that they were coming. Are you guys okay? Nye Tian saw that the eyes of Long Outyen and Bai Xiaofei were gradually recovering, and he used his divine senses to check, confirming that the two were not controlled by the soul-devouring demon king, and only then did he feel relieved. I'm fine. Bai Xiaofei stood up, and his face slightly recovered. However, Long Outyen was sitting on the ground, and his face showed great fear, and even a little fear. Nye Tian was puzzled. He knew that Long Outyen was not afraid of anything, so what did he see just now that could make him so panicked? In Nye Tian's memory, he had never seen Long Outyen react like this. Big brother! At this moment, Long Outyen suddenly stood up, and the fear in his eyes disappeared, replaced by great anger. He suddenly said, I just saw a man in black appear, and he killed my father. Lord Long Shao? Nye Tian was slightly stunned. He had heard that Long Outyen's father was called Long Shao, and he was also a Heaven Realm pinnacle warrior, but unfortunately, he died very early. Long Zhao's death was very mysterious, and was considered a major event in the Heaven Realm Divine Realm. However, Nye Tian was very young at that time and not famous, so he did not know the specific situation. All these years, Long Outyen had been investigating the cause of Long Zhao's death, and had never given up. Outyen, you were under a mental attack just now, and everything you saw was an illusion. Nye Tian stepped forward and said calmly. Chapter 1163. In the passageway, Long Outyen took a long time to calm down, but his face was solemn. Although he saw a black-robed figure, he did not see the person's face clearly. He only felt that it was somewhat familiar. Nye Tian's expression was also somewhat grave. He knew that the spiritual hallucination would awaken the most terrifying memories in the depths of a martial artist's soul. It was highly possible that Long Outyen had seen an image hidden in the depths of his soul. When Long Shao died, Long Outyen was only a few years old. It was highly possible that he saw the scene of his father's death, but had forgotten about it. Now that he had suffered a spiritual attack, his sealed memories were awakened. Big brother, let's go forward. Long Outyen suddenly calmed down. He knew that now was not the time to think about this. He had to deal with the Soul-Eater Demon King first. Nye Tian nodded slightly and said in his heart, Outyen, don't worry. I will definitely help you find out the truth behind Lord Long Zhao's death. The three of them calmed down and continued forward. This passageway was very long, at least tens of thousands of meters. After a while, a magnificent palace appeared in front of Nye Tian and the rest. It really is a palace. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. Before entering the passageway, he had already vaguely seen a palace in the holographic projection. Oh no! At this moment, Nye Tian suddenly thought of something. He stretched out his palm, and a ball of green liquid appeared in his palm. It was the tree spirit liquid that the Treant tribe leader had given him. He had forgotten to transmit the location of the Soul Eater Demon King to the Treant tribe leader. Nye Tion's divine sense surged into the tree spirit liquid. Only then did he feel more at ease. I did not expect such a magnificent palace to be here. Long Outyen was astonished. This palace was too magnificent. It was even bigger than the temples of the Heaven Realm's 9 emperors. It looked simple and dignified, giving people the urge to prostrate and worship it. Nye Tion was also astonished. It seemed that the Iron Sword Demon King had used the floating mountain to seal the Soul Eater Demon King and the entire palace. This kind of heaven-defying means was really shocking. The Soul Eater Demon King is in the palace. Bai Xiaofei's eyes flashed as he pointed at the palace. Ants, welcome to the soul-devouring devil palace. At practically the exact same moment, a vast voice sounded out from within the hall, and it was powerful, terrifying, and carried a strong and oppressive aura. Then, dozens of figures flew out of the hall. They were demons formed by the soul-devouring mycelium. These soul-devouring devil men were about the same size as a normal human, but their bodies were condensed from soul-devouring mycelium. One could only vaguely make out a human shape. Dark green light surged around their bodies, emitting a dark green mist. It was extremely strange. Be careful, these soul-devouring mycelium are very frightening and can devour people's divine sense. Nye Tion's eyes were slightly nervous as he warned. He had seen martial artists controlled by the soul-devouring mycelium before. Even the Gu Shuren clan could be controlled by the soul-devouring mycelium. He had to be extremely cautious when fighting against these soul-devouring demons. This was especially true for Long Outyen. He was very strong, but his resistance to the soul-devouring mycelium was not strong. If he was controlled by the soul-devouring mycelium, it would be really bad. Nye Tion had the Thunderbolt Divine Veins, and Bai Xiaofei had the Thousand Night Divine Seal. Both of them were not afraid of the soul-devouring mycelium. A bunch of dregs die for this father. Long Outyen did not take Nye Tion's warning to heart. He roared and directly rushed over. Ao Tion! Nye Tion was startled. He shouted and casually released a sea of lightning from his body. It turned into a lightning shield and suddenly appeared, enveloping Long Outyen. Long Outyen had just learned about his father's death. He had endless anger in his heart that needed to be vented. It was just the right time to vent his anger on these soul-devouring demons. Boom! The dragon-slaying slash in Long Outyen's hand slashed down. The surging saber intent bloomed. The saber light was shocking. It suddenly burst out, and like a collapsing mountain, it pressed towards the soul-devouring demons. Rumble! When the saber shadow fell, a loud explosion sounded. 1,000-meter-long ravine appeared on the ground. The bluestone floor instantly cracked. Broken rocks flew in the air, and directly turned into stone powder under the saber intent. The might of Long Outyen's saber strike was extremely terrifying. It was enough to destroy a mountain. However, these soul-devouring demons were very strange. They were actually able to block the saber intent. The dark green light surrounding them seemed to have turned into a light shield, blocking the saber intent's impact. In the next moment, these soul-devouring demons directly flew up and fiercely pounced towards Long Outyen. Hua hua hua! In the void, countless thorny vines were released from the Wraith Devil's body, directly forming a terrifying web of thorns that filled the entire space. It was like a ferocious monster, rolling down on Yi Futian. Be careful! Seeing this scene, Nye Tion cried out in alarm. These thorny vines were all formed from the soul-devouring mycelium. The lightning net might not be able to block them. Nye Tion didn't hesitate. The lightning sea behind him instantly became violent. Lightning divine marks surged out, rolling like a raging wave, emitting a vast and mighty lightning aura. The air was filled with a terrifying thunder intent. Countless lightning bolts danced wildly like snakes, surging towards the sea of thorns. Boom! Boom! Two terrifying forces collided head-on. The sound of an explosion rang out in the air. Waves of energy spread out, and the entire hall started to shake, as if it was going to collapse under the terrifying power. Chi-chi-chi. Ear-piercing sounds rang out unceasingly. The power of lightning had a strong suppressive effect on the soul-devouring mycelium. The sea of thorns was actually forcefully torn apart, and countless thorny vines were annihilated by the lightning. However, the power of the soul-devouring mycelium was also very terrifying. It seeped into the lightning sea and directly entered Nye Tian's body. In an instant, Nye Tian felt an intense pain assaulting him. It instantly spread throughout his body, causing him to howl in pain. These soul-devouring demons absorbed the power of the soul-devouring mycelium over a long period of time. Each of them had the strength of a fifth-level heavenly emperor. Furthermore, they could resist all kinds of other powers. Even Long Aotian's saber intent was unable to destroy them. Big brother! Long Aotian's gaze trembled violently. He slashed down with his saber again. The saber light shot out in midair, and a violent killing aura exploded. However, it was unable to destroy the Sea of Thorns. Seeing that the power of lightning was already at a disadvantage, Nye Tian's face actually turned green, as if he was about to be controlled by the soul-devouring mycelium. At this moment, his limbs and meridians were already filled with the soul-devouring mycelium. If not for his lightning divine marks, the holographic divine marks, and his super-strong mental energy, his divine sense would have collapsed long ago. Brat, these soul-devouring demons were specially condensed by this king. Even if your power of lightning is able to suppress the soul-devouring mycelium, you won't be able to escape death today. The soul-devouring demon king's voice rang out, reverberating in the void. It seemed very ruthless. The only person he was wary of was Nye Tian. As long as he killed Nye Tian, Long Aotian would instantly be controlled by the soul-devouring mycelium and become his puppet. The 9 dragon veins in Nye Tian's body were circulating frantically. However, because of the existence of the soul-devouring mycelium, they were unable to gush out, and it was difficult for them to unleash their power.